can't do it the day of. Like we can't assume that ever.
We fly by the seat of our pants, and that's why we're live, and we're just going to wing it, right?
Well, I do have news and amuse.
Oh, we do have that. That's great.
Hi, all.
Good evening.
Normally, we're live for a few minutes with a nice background graphic, but you know what? We could take this time to talk about this thing that's going on with the bank account, because I think that that's a very interesting little story, but I'm gonna wait for more people to come on. But yeah, all sorts of good stuff to talk about. I got a message from a friend. It's like, is Reese in New York? It's flooding. I'm like, you do realize he's in Ithaca.
Everybody assumes that everybody who's
right, if you're in New York, you're in the city. I'm like, he's in Ithaca on top of a hill, actually. He's good.
Yeah, he's in literally upstate New York in an elevator.
Well, right, but he's literally on top of a hill, so he's good. Hello, all. Welcome. Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And we didn't even know that we were going to be wearing the correct opposite shirts.
I didn't care, actually. I was like, this is what I'm wearing. I didn't care. If you were wearing the same one, we would just be twinning.
We were just going to walk right into it and there would be no problems, as there never seems to be. For some reason, there's that I said ESPN.
We're practically twins.
Yeah, ESP factor of just knowing you're going to wear purple, I'll wear white. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Just works out that way.
So, guys, something really interesting happened. And we're going to talk about this very briefly before our candidate comes on. So, I get a message, I get an email from Stripe, which is the company or the program, guys, I'm so tech challenged, that handles our donations on our webpage, which we almost never get any. When people support us, it's usually as a Patreon or maybe in a super chat, which would be through Google, but very rarely does something come through Stripe. So I get an email that $1,100 and change is being deposited into our GenCore account.
A lot of money.
And yeah, and I'm excited about it, mind you. And I'm thinking, oh, cool, big benefactor, yay. And I go and I look at the transaction history to see it, and something is really off. It's a scam. And then it reminded me of a phone call I got last week from a gentleman who told me there was a $3 charge on his card to GenCore. And I didn't make much of it. I figured his kid got his card and did a super chat, and I wasn't going to investigate he said there were 2 charges for $3, so $6. I wasn't going to really dig into this. I didn't think anything of it. But when I look at the transaction history on Stripe, guys, it is like 100 fake looking email charges for $3 each. And they probably hacked a whole bunch of different people's credit cards to donate to us. And of course, being in the industry we're in, my first thought goes to, okay, someone's setting me up, which is very likely what it is. So, and I don't want money that isn't mine anyway. So I just want to put it out there. We're having it video documented that every single dime of that is actually being investigated by Stripe. I have it documented. We're not accepting it, and it will sit until we figure out how to resolve it. And if for whatever reason it can't get resolved, I'm donating it. So we're not taking any of that money. So I just have this feeling, and the date of when all this started happening is tied to us basically being harassed. So somebody is trying to I'm not sure what their end game is. Is it like they think I would just take the money and then a few months later they would just sort of say, hey, or they're trying to make it look like I'm hacking accounts? I don't know. Anyone who knows me knows I'm barely capable of logging into my Gmail account. So I'm not hacking anything. But anyway, guys.
Something very unsettling about
it's weird.
That type of thing. And
it's weird and it's personal. And I know, and we have our suspicions. But again, only suspicions. But it is being formally investigated. We will hopefully, I don't know if they'll ever get to the bottom of it, but nonetheless, I like it all being out there that we are aware of this, and we're not accepting any of the money. So you can keep doing it and hacking into all different people's accounts. It's really, illegal, but it's not going to hurt us in any way because we're not going to accept the money. So whoever's doing it, because we also get hate watchers too. So it could be the same people. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but we definitely
we're on to you. Well, we don't know who, but we're on to.
The other reason, and the reason why we're suspicious is because a friend that is a school board member here in Florida, a non-corporate representative on a school board in an important county, basically had some operative unearth something that happened in her life when she was a teenager. And again, there's no relevancy to what's going on now, but the only reason people do things like that is because they're trying to take you out.
Yeah, and the date of when these transactions started is very suspect to me. And because as soon as I saw the date, I'm like, okay, and that's why we're suspect. But it's really sad, guys. If the people doing this, if you would harness that energy, that hatred that you have towards me, like I am I'm I'm like a microcosm of Susan Sarandon to these people. That's what it feels like. Like they're so.
We're going to get to Susan Sarandon.
I have no power.
We're going to get to Susan Sarandon in a little while, but that's definitely a talking
please,
point
people,
for this
harness
evening.
your energy. Don't hack me. Like, please dedicate your time to something like, a direct action.
Yeah, like what Jordan and Jen were talking about on Status Quo earlier, which is,
anyway,
the most important thing. And of course, the gentleman we're about to bring in, who is running for the U.S. Congress, I think knows a thing or two about these political gamesmanship tactics.
I'm sure he does. If he's running as a non-corporate candidate, I'm sure he's a
non-corporate candidate who actually has worked on Capitol Hill. So that's
so he has swum in the swamp.
I think that's a safe bet, but that's
I keep trying to wash the swamp off of me every day. I feel like I'm trying to wash it off of me.
Yeah, makes you wonder why you're here, right? So without further ado, Muad Hrezi. Oh, and I got to spell it right because I have made that mistake. I put the E in front of the R, but now I'm going to put the R in front of the E. So now it is.
And are you
correct.
sure it's pronounced Maud?
Is it pronounced Maud? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
No, it isn't.
It's
not. It's probably Muad.
Muad? Okay.
I don't know. Better, right? Okay, thank you. I love outdoing him with this. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah, sure, linguist. Have at it.
Just call me Noam Chomsky.
Muad.
No. Muad.
Muad, exactly. But
welcome to Generational Change.
My pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be a guest, and thank you guys for having me. Really excited about the conversation we're gonna have. And hard feelings about the name. It's a tricky one. My parents came here as immigrants, and I think they were still figuring out English. There's probably different ways of spelling it to make it sound or to make it written phonetically. But Muad Hrezi.
But so it's basically like it's like two syllables.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing. See?
Well, it's a good conversation starter.
Well, you know what? Whatever. It's an icebreaker. Where is your family from?
So my parents came to the U.S. in the 80s from Libya. They actually came here as asylum seekers, fleeing from the Gaddafi regime back in the day. They set up shop in Connecticut. Well, my dad went a little bit all over. It was, it's very interesting to hear about like immigrant stories. Like my dad went to Oklahoma, then Louisiana, and I'm like, Dad, how did you go to Oklahoma? Like that's a very interesting place to begin. But I think he just that's where the scholarship was that he received. So
well, yeah, but so you are running for Connecticut's 1st district, and tell everyone a little bit about yourself. What your life was before you decided to like give it all up for this nonsense, and then a little bit about your district. Sure.
So my personal story begins with my own parents' story. And like I said, they came to the United States. They set up shop in Connecticut. And I had a pretty typical, ordinary childhood. Nothing really out of the ordinary. But my parents were able to carve out a small piece of the American dream. Bought a house, I had a car, all that good stuff. But things started to go a little awry during the Great Recession like it did for so many other families. And during that time, my parents had to foreclose on our house because my dad got his pay cut slashed big time one day and foreclosed on our house. A few weeks later, my mom gets really sick, has kidney stones. We go to the hospital, ends up costing us $20,000 that my parents couldn't pay off. And this is with premium, high quality health insurance. That my dad was like doing well off, like he was an executive. So it like shocked us that we still couldn't afford, a simple operation for kidney stones. And these were kind of like the beginnings of my inquiries into like our political systems and what was happening. I was a teenager at that time, senior in high school, I believe. And I started becoming interested in like what was going on, why was this happening? I saw it happening to so many others in my community, uncles and aunts and friends and family, and just it was pervasive, as everyone knows, during the Great Recession. So went to school in Chapel Hill, studied public health.
Wait. You went to UNC?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a reject. Nice to meet you. I wanted to go to UNC. I didn't get in. I wasn't good enough. Sorry.
Listen, I absolutely was not good enough. The only thing that I had that really I think probably convinced them was that I was a really good runner.
Okay.
My fun fact is that I was recruited as an athlete. I was the 12th best 2-miler in the country during my senior year.
Wow.
So I was really good at running long distance, and that was my talent that kept on giving. I got recruited to go to UNC, and then I got the contagion of being interested in politics and like really just wanting to learn more. It's like, sometimes when this stuff becomes relevant in our own lives, it tends to just create a real interest in like learning more about whatever it is. But for me, it was like healthcare, and I saw how it impacted my own family and the economy. Started watching debates, and it was around the time that Obama was coming around, and so I was like, okay, like, you know, like let's watch presidential debates, let's hear what the new plans are. And ever since then, I've just been really fascinated and intrigued and enraged at times by like what's happening in our politics. But ever since then, I've been really interested in this stuff. Yeah.
What part of Connecticut is one? I mean, Connecticut's really small. So like to me, like I feel like my district here is probably not much smaller than the state of Connecticut, right? I mean, Connecticut's pretty little.
No, I mean, Connecticut has, you know, it's
so
not
where are you? Where's one?
So District 1 is Hartford, in the greater Hartford area. It's kind of big. It has some rural parts, but it's, you know, the population is primarily concentrated in Hartford and greater Hartford, but goes up to like the Massachusetts border and a little bit below Hartford.
Okay. I've actually been to Hartford. When I was looking at colleges, one of the ones I went to go look at was UMass Amherst, and we flew into Hartford. And I wish I could tell you I was impressed. It's kind of, I thought at the time, and this was a while ago, mind you, it looked like it really needed some love. Like it really, this was, okay, I'm aging myself, but this was in 88. But it looked like a little beaten is what it looked like, you know? So what kind of demographics make up that city?
Yeah, that's a great question. And your characterization probably still stands true today. Connecticut is one of the only states, and I believe it is the only state that never recovered from the Great Recession. So we've had a lot of economic woes, and it's one of the few states that has migration loss every year. So there's a lot of reasons that people are leaving, and one of them is infrastructure, and just the fact that we have so much crumbling infrastructure in Hartford and in the area and the region itself, and we need a lot more like investment. But demographics for the district in general, primarily urban in Hartford, East Hartford, and West Hartford. But just like everywhere else, it's pretty kind of complicated. You know, you have some rural farmlands up in the northwest and northeastern parts. You have a lot of segregation of wealth. Connecticut's one of the most segregated states in the country. So essentially, we set up a system where Hartford and East Hartford have a lot of the more lower income families, and typically those are minorities, and they're kind of locked in by zoning regulations. And completely everywhere else, completely beside that, is really wealthy, affluent suburban areas. So you have some of the richest zip codes in the country right nearby. And even within Hartford itself, it's just mind-boggling. You can go 2 or 3 blocks, and you'll go from millionaires' mansions, usually executives for health insurers and defense industry companies, and then a couple blocks later, you'll see kind of the service class living, in rundown, dilapidated apartment buildings. And the problem isn't the fact that they're rich and people are living side by side. It's that there are laws like created to keep poor people out of the richer neighborhoods, and that these laws are also laws used to keep poor people poor. And so it's like, enraging to see how much of a bubble there is just right beside where all the kind of the poverty and the misfortune and the underserved live.
We see the same thing in New Haven and Bridgeport. It's not something that is unheralded. It's the same thing in New Jersey, where I'm from.
It's in a lot. Look, it's in urban places. You tend to see it a lot. But the reality is the divide is becoming more and more pronounced. Obvious. It is. It just is. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everywhere, but obviously more expensive places to live and that have higher housing costs. I think it's just you see it more outwardly than you do in places that might be more reasonable to live.
Good friend of the show, Lauren Steiner, wants to know why you have decided with the United States Congress instead of a local office, which is something a lot of people are always curious about. But I will, in one little respect, actually defend you on your decision to run for Congress, because you do have some very interesting experience. You have actually worked on Capitol Hill for over 2 years. So if you could talk about that I think that would be a great place to start for why you are taking this huge leap, as we would say.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I'm happy to respond to that or any other question. I love having frank discussions. So as you mentioned, I used to work for a U.S. Senator, Senator Chris Murphy. I advised him for about 3 years. I know Congress very well. I know the U.S. Senate really well, and I think that is of interest to so many progressives, especially when it comes to the filibuster and these procedural tactics that have constantly been deployed to hinder a lot of the progress we want. And there's definitely a game beneath that game, and kind of being immersed in the the climate and in the kind of tendencies of these institutions, it really helps one to understand how you would navigate it if elected. So I think that I'm well versed in Congress, well versed in how policy is created. I've been the brains for a U.S. Senator for 3 years. I think I can hit the ground running, and I can, assure you that I probably know policy better than a lot of these members, to be completely honest. And then there's still
that's a low bar, Muad. That's a very low bar, but I appreciate the sentiment of what you're saying. And Lauren, Lauren, I'm sure you agree that that's a very good answer. I understand what she's saying as well about that, and I would get that question. Our reasoning why we did what we did was completely different. It was, everybody has different, like, what is your plan? What is your reason? But I actually think your answer is excellent. I can't really think of
we don't
better
want to
answer.
And we don't want to take away from people who have the aspirations of running for Congress.
No.
But Muad, as I'm sure you can attest to, especially first-time candidates that don't have any electoral experience, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. And there is so many layers that go into this. The type of things that local elected officials will do to curry favor with the higher-ups, the things that the precinct committee people that have been in place for decades, as I'm sure is the case. Connecticut is a very democratically strong state in many ways. If you can talk about the relationships that you have been able to build, because again, you're not going to be able to pull this off unless you do have relationships in place in those types of infrastructural
areas. It's unfortunate. It's an inconvenient truth.
Yeah. No, I think there are three things that I think determine who's going to win a race. It's the candidate, the district, and staff and connections, to be honest. And who do you know, relationships. So that third part is like one of the three pillars. So extremely important. It's not enough to know policy or, know the district well. Like, you need to have relationships, you need to build those relationships. One, I think working in Congress honestly gives me a leg up from maybe people who don't have those relationships within political institutions. For instance, a lot of my friends work in press shops, and that is kind of a obscure knowledge base. It's tough to know how to engage with the press, how to get press attention. But when it comes within the district, we in Connecticut have these democratic town committees that are really powerful and also kind of an unknown part of the process. And making sure that one knows who is on these DTCs, Democratic Town Councils, and how to engage with them is super important. And thankfully, because I come from the state, like I've well known within the state, I've been like an organizer in my community. I've worked with a lot of progressives. I have inroads into those communities. And I, it's always helpful to have somebody who can vouch for you within these like small political institutions within local or municipal governments who can really, I think, provide a sense of vouching for who you are. Yeah.
What's the field look like? Like, is this are you challenging an incumbent or is it an open seat? You probably know, but I have no idea.
He's challenging an incumbent.
Okay, and who is the lovely person that we're challenging? I can imagine
he's not lovely. I'm
sure not. Okay, who is the corporate whore which we are challenging?
Those are Jen's terms, not mine. I have no qualms with him as a person, but my disagreements are 100% vehement and policy based and substantive. So I'm running against Representative John Larson.
Does he take corporate money?
He does.
Therefore, he is a corporate whore.
Can you have a little bit of decorum?
No.
Just a slight bit?
No, you know what? No, because I'll tell you why. Because those people who do that have actually ruined the word whore for people and honestly, it's just, that's what it is. What it is. I think you got to call it when you see it.
Muad,
sorry.
How long has Larson been in elected office?
So Larson has been in office for about 22 years now.
Oh.
That's it?
22 years in Congress. He's been on the state level, I think maybe 10 or 20 years before that.
Sounds like someone we know.
Yeah.
We have the exact same situation with Wasserman Schultz.
What is your
career politician?
What is your industry there? What are the working people like? A lot of the times we get representatives that are so beholden to whatever industry runs their town, and they're so scared to ever stand up, whether it's military, industrial complex, whatever the polluting industry is of the town, because it gives jobs. So they can't. It's this constant battle, and so I'm always curious, like what are the industries in your district?
No, that's exactly right. There's always this tension between trying to do the right thing in the industry that's saying if you do the right thing, you're going to cost jobs and livelihood, and people tend to really respond to that fear aspect. But the big industries for us are health insurance. We are considered the insurance capital of the world. We have some of the largest insurance companies either headquartered here or having really large satellite campuses. And then we have the defense industry. So sprinkled all across Connecticut, but we have some big players in the district as well. We have Pratt & Whitney, which makes the engines for the F-35, which has cost us $1.7 trillion, is considered a failure by the Air Force itself. John McCain, the War Hawk, has called it a failure. But surprise, surprise, Representative Larson thinks it's a wonderful program and continues to say we should invest in it heavily, even more than the Pentagon requests every year. I think that we definitely need a strong military. There's no, I think, challenging that idea. But $1.7 trillion for a failed fighter jet, which is the most expensive program. I think a lot of incumbents say that they all about fiscal management. That sounds like terrible fiscal management to me. We can invest in military and we can invest in the economy, but we don't have to throw money away to the likes of 1.7 trillion. You give the people of our district 1/10 of that, and I'm sure we would have much larger economic output. We'd have better roads. We'd have better schools. So it's about how do we spend that money wisely and not just throw it around. And we know where that money honestly goes. It goes to executive pay. It goes to forever wars. It goes to lobbying. Very, very little actually reaches the engineers or the receptionists at these companies. So I think we have to be clear-eyed about what is actually what is this money actually going towards.
We're speaking with Muad Hrezi, who's running for Congress in Connecticut's 1st district, which happens to have quite a few colleges and universities, led by the University of Hartford. If you could talk about the importance of getting the youth vote and building that, because this is, no pun intended, a generational change type of campaign. The gentleman who is a representative is more than twice your age. It's not being ageist, but it's being realistic in the sense that there really is this huge gap in terms of your philosophy versus his, but also the ability to excite a lot of people who would like to be involved in the political process and have certainly been down as of late. So if you could talk about that in terms of cultivating that support network across those multiple colleges and universities, which again, Connecticut has plenty, but certainly the University of Hartford definitely makes an impact for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. College students and young people in general are going to be crucial to this election in our campaign. We know that I'm a different type of candidate, and we hope to galvanize a different type of electorate, similar to what other newcomers have been able to do. I think the candidate matters a lot. When you have somebody who reflects your values, your principles, your background, you tend to be more likely to vote. So we are going to be doing a lot, working with colleges and universities, speaking to students, telling them what's on the line, how they can get involved. A lot of them will be first-time voters, and we know that they'll be excited to cast their ballot for somebody who actually is talking to them about the issues that matter to them in a way that they feel is genuine. It's funny. I was just talking to some college students recently, and they were telling me how the incumbent was reaching out, offering paid internships, and that they were not interested at all and were willing to work for me for free because we're still bootstrapping it and we don't have a couple $1 million in the hand. And I think that speaks volumes. It shows
it does.
Money can't buy you, real energy and enthusiasm. And what we're offering isn't, $15 an hour or $20 an hour. What we're offering is, here's an opportunity to join a movement, and we can really make something happen here. And hopefully, if we're able to win and succeed, we can be part of this growing, burgeoning progressive movement that will hopefully deliver on the biggest things that we're asking for, whether it's student debt or climate change.
Yeah. Also looking at being able to give some people credit, because we've done that before. We've had people help us for credit. So, because for a lot of kids, that's just as valuable.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely stuff that we offer. We want to also help uplift what they're working on. A lot of these college students are passionate and are working on their own projects on their college campuses, whether it's destigmatizing mental health services or talking about, rape culture on college campuses. And so we want to be a movement that is not just, centered around maybe what this campaign is focused on the national level, but we want to talk about what's mattering, like what matters to college students on their own campuses and how we can uplift them and uplift their voices. And so we want this to be like a home for people who are really passionate about an issue in the area. And I think that there'll be a lot of intersection between what we're working on and what other students are working on as well.
So a big question, and it's an important one, because if you are going to be competitive, especially in a wealthy state like Connecticut, is fundraising. But from what I've seen, it looks like you are doing pretty well with that so far. So if you can elaborate on, how fundraising is going for the campaign overall, potential goals going forward. If there are certain numbers that you're looking to hit, especially for a first-time candidate, being able to have that war chest, if you will, come primary time, because we all know Larson is going to have at least $2 to $3 million behind him to ensure that he blankets the airwaves with as many commercials as possible, run it ad nauseum. We saw what happened with Nina Turner against Chantel Brown in Cleveland. They'll do the exact same thing. So fundraising is going to be key in terms of not being able to match, but in terms of being able to compete.
No, absolutely. It's one of the realities. It's a sad reality, but you just need money to run an operation, to run an apparatus, to get out your message and to let the people know what's at stake. So we've been doing a decent job of fundraising. We always want to get more money and continue building up our coffers. We've raised about $200,000. We hope to raise another $300,000 in the next 6 months. Our goal for the entire election is about $1 million. We think that that'll give us what we need to at least compete on the airwaves and to get the volunteers and the field team we need in place, to send out the flyers, to run those Facebook ads. We want to be nimble. We want to use as much tech as we can. We want to be as sophisticated as we can. And that comes at a price tag. But I'm confident that there's going to be energy, and there already has been. And a lot of it's coming because I don't look like other candidates. I don't, sound like other candidates. And there's something that people like, it resonates with them. So I'm excited. We'll see what ends up happening with the fundraising. It's always kind of like a black box. You just kind of put your message out there and
put his thing up. Well, we're gonna tell guys. I always say, rotate the money, rotate monthly donations, do what you can to throw money in all different places. It's sort of like, it's hedging your bets. Support all different candidates, but it's important. And unfortunately, money does matter. But people can also sign up to help phone bank and text and do, like, there's a lot of different things that,
No, but done. There's
and you're not taking any corporate PAC money, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, yeah, you would have had to get through that screening to come. Yeah, you wouldn't have had somebody on that was.
I think I'm pretty good at screening candidates.
Yeah, Lauren, we only have on non-corporate candidates.
Muad, one of the recent candidates we had on, who we also think is very primed for this, is Amani Oakley in New Jersey's 10th district, who you do know. And she also has that legislative experience. If you could, just shed some light on what separates you from other first-time candidates based on the experience that you do have, and why that should set you up nicely in terms of being prepared in a way that maybe other first-time candidates are not.
Yeah. That's a great question. I would just start off by saying I don't want to dissuade anyone. I think I've been offered opportunities that will help me, but I think everyone brings to the table some special skill set or knowledge base or relational organizing techniques that they can deploy. But what I bring to the table is the fact that I have a kind of a known name in the state. I'm somebody who was a state champion in running. My brother is a state champion in running. So people all across the state, when I first launched, were really excited. I had friends all over the entire state who knew me, folks that I competed against, and friends and colleagues and stuff. So it was really exciting. I also bring to the fact, as we mentioned earlier, that I used to work for Senator Murphy. So I have relationships all across the state from 3 years of talking to people who come into the office, knowing faces, knowing issues that matter to people in our state. So it just gives me kind of a 3-year head start versus somebody who might just be coming into this anew. What else do I have? I think being from the Muslim community, we're a tight-knit community, and it matters a lot. A lot of Muslims, unfortunately, don't vote in elections because they just feel like politics doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican. Republicans will be xenophobic on television, but Democrats will use the NSA to spy on us and TSA to hold us up at airports. And Democrats don't want to talk about that. So a lot of Muslims feel kind of ostracized from both parties and don't feel like anyone's speaking to them. We're kind of used as a token population against Trump once in a while, but there's not a ton of trust. So I think having somebody who is running and on the ballot will hopefully galvanize a kind of a silent, large population that I think wants to speak its mind. But also there's a lot of energy that comes in volunteers, donations, resources. And so that energy is pouring in, which really helps out, honestly. So those are just some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, guys, just remember, if you can't support financially, even every time you like something, share a tweet, pass it on, share it with your friends, those things really help. So there are things that people can do to support, even if they can't afford to send money. So.
And Muad, is there a sizable Muslim population in the Hartford area? Is that?
Yeah, there is. There's no, hard numbers, unfortunately, but from what we understand, there's about 5,000 to 8,000. So if we can get a good amount of our Muslim population here to show up on election day, that can definitely get us the win. So our district in our entire state has a pretty good democratic machine, and it kind of suppresses votes. We have a very low turnout, similar to AOC. I think it was 2014. I kid you not. I think we had 8,000 people vote in that midterm, which is, just really frightening. Only 8,000 people elected a U.S. House member and probably a senator that year. But we expect to have only 60,000 people at most to show up. So we think, a small Muslim population like ours, if they show up in big numbers, can really make the difference in get us approved.
Well, if you saw what it has done for Rashida Tlaib, and especially what it has done for Ilhan Omar, when you consider the daggers that have been thrown at her in particular, but the Muslim community has her back. And that, I think, is something that's very big, because, it is a population that isn't respected or treated the way that it should be. And if they had a champion like
Which one is?
It's a fair point.
I'm just saying.
But with somebody like you'll get them. You'll get, if you can get them out, then that could very well make the difference. And the fact that the one thing that Wasserman Schultz did when Jen ran was she did everything in her power to just ignore, don't even acknowledge her, because I guess from her perspective, if she did acknowledge her, that wouldn't be good. And the fact that your opponent is already acknowledging you and trying to pick off some potential supporters of yours by, let's face it, it's kind of a bribe when you think about it. Hey, you want a job? I'll give you a job. Just don't work for that guy. As far as I'm
still
concerned,
doesn't mean they'll vote for him.
That's true. Maybe they'll take the job and just be working for you.
I'm just saying.
But nevertheless, you seem like a fantastic candidate. Again, guys, Hrezi.com, very easy. Go check them out. Definitely support them if you can, whatever capacity. Again, financial donations always help, but so does phone banking, text banking. And if you are in the just
Greater
the general
Hartford area,
upstate New York, Western Massachusetts, and of course, Central and Northern Connecticut, if you have the opportunity to get out and knock on some doors, be a great opportunity to get involved with a really solid grassroots campaign. Muad, we'd love to have you back. We're going to be doing more candidate panels as we go forward. So
we'll have you back. Well, we're going to let everybody circle back again. When is your election?
So our election is going to be a little less than a year. August 11th, we have one of the latest primaries in the country.
Right. We have late primary too. Yeah, we're even later than that. But thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you back on when we get closer, and we'll start doing it focusing more. It's hard at this point so early out to really be focusing.
No, but it is important to build that name recognition. I mean, that is everything. And if we can play a small part in helping, build your name recognition and cultivate these relationships, because again, the non-corporate left movement is not a well-oiled machine. And we have to do everything we can to start building that well-oiled machine. And if we can be a part of that in some capacity, we're more than happy to do it. And we're very glad to see you running. And we certainly look forward to connecting with you again in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. And if I can just say one last thing is that what you guys are doing is super meaningful and so helpful. I know I talk to a lot of different candidates running, and it's helpful to have a platform where you guys can uplift and present us to your audience. And honestly, I wish that more progressive voices would do this. Like you said, we don't have a well-oiled machine, but we have some rising stars, and we do need to, I think, support candidates because that is one of the most powerful tools we have.
Definitely reach out to Mike Figueredo. He's one of the best about bringing on new candidates, and he has a really good he's a big platform.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I'd be happy to pass the word along. If there's anything we could do to assist, just let us know. Like I said, we're in it for the right reasons. We have no ego in this. This is about, building the movement. And if we can play a small part, we're happy to do it. And we really appreciate your kind words. And like I said, we will definitely have you back again really soon.
Thank you, Muad.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
You do the same. Bye.
So I think what we should do, because this is exciting, because Erica's back, but what I think would be cool, since this was sort of like we didn't really have a plan, we've never really done it where we kind of do news and amuse as a conversational thing. Like we always sort of, yeah, I'm just saying, like we could do that. Like that's kind of what Mike has been doing on that panel, like that we sat on, where he's like, okay, these are the news stories. We're going to talk about this stuff. So we could do that. I mean, we're kind of, guys, we're always by the seat of our pants here.
Not always.
Okay,
but
not always.
It's been a little bit difficult as of
today.
late.
Today has been a day.
Yeah, it kind of has. Did everything go okay today, by the way? Or?
Yeah, it was just crazy. It's just.
You had mom duties. And
I had a lot of mom duties, and I had to spend a lot of hours driving around in my car with my dogs because people were coming to look at my house because we've listed our house. And so we have to get out of the house, and now I have dogs. So, and then you can't just go somewhere, and it's been raining out. So it's like, you can't just go sit in a park.
Well, at least you're not sitting in a lake right now, because that's what a lot of people are frankly sitting in. Or you could be in a state that doesn't want you to have your rights. And
that's correct. Well, I am in a state that doesn't want me to have my rights. We kind of all are, for the most part. It's just Texas is finding some seriously interesting loopholes, but we're going to talk about that. I
don't know where that's going to go. I mean, it's really it could be one of those circumstances where they bit off more than they could chew. I don't know. Maybe they did.
Well, the way that they're doing it, yeah, it's going to be really interesting how they're doing it, because what it is it allows for civil litigation. And so it's not a criminal situation, which definitely makes it, that's why.
All right. So because you're the lawyer here.
Well, what I'm saying is that's why I think that it wasn't going to be accepted necessarily as a case of priority, because our Supreme Court is so conservative right now but they still know that this is a really tough issue. So they would rather not even deal with it. Like they are going to put it off dealing with it. But this, because it seeks civil penalties, we're going to look at this. So basically you would pay a fine. You can't get arrested. No, well, right. You could be sued civilly.
By who?
Well, that's what I need to figure out here, is who has the standing to do that. This
is what's so amazing about this. And again,
see, that's here. So Chief Justice John Roberts joined the court's 3 liberals to say he would have kept the law from being implemented while the legality of the law was waiting court. He described the Texas statute's enforcement plan as not only unusual, but unprecedented, and said it deserved more exacting judicial scrutiny. I can't imagine. Oh, yeah. So Sotomayor would have been. It's not good. Yeah. Newly banned procedure. So anyway, we're going to get onto that. I mean, we don't have to really get into it now.
But again, I do think that it is a very, again, everybody's up in hysteria right now. And this is where it becomes an even more interesting conversation because of the fact.
Oh, so strangers can actually sue.
Well, they have a hotline.
Right. Complete strangers can actually sue them for, like, I think it says $10,000 for that. Like, that's just.
And Ricardo was right. And it's not a surprise.
No.
Our state is definitely, look, they're going to line up. And it was only a matter of time before they attempted to do something along these lines. And it's going to happen. I mean, this is.
Are you waiting for Donna? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we could bring.
I mean, we should just.
We could bring Eric in. So let's bring our good friend into the show.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Jen. Hi, Peter. How are you both doing? It's good to be back.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Where are you these days?
Wow. So we're wrapping up our 100 counties in 100 days tour. And so we have about 10 more counties to get done between right now. I just got back home off the road. Well, I'm not home. I'm in Durham. And so this is kind of my second home away from my home in Northampton County. And we're just really, really excited. 100 counties in 100 days, direct voter engagement. And we've just been so excited about the energy that we're finding on the campaign trail. There are so many folks in the rural parts of the state. They're like, oh my goodness, I have not seen a U.S. Senate candidate in 40 years. Thank you for visiting our community. Instead of just coming by and asking for a vote, you really want to hear from the constituents and the folks across the state. So
it's amazing that people respond. It's amazing how people respond when you actually give a crap.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. So, you know, thank you for coming on. We really weren't sure what we were going to do today. And we really were just about to get into talking about the Texas abortion thing. So, I mean, I'm sure you're cool. We were just going to sort of just like shoot the shit and stuff, if that's cool. But you could definitely give us like any sort of campaign updates, just people who aren't reading the little sign. Erica Smith is running for U.S. Senate in the state of North Carolina, my future home state. And yeah, so
That's
it's very
no lie.
exciting. No, it's no lie.
Well, we'd love to have you. I know you were here this summer, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to connect, but we were.
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
no, it's all good. So how was your event? You had an event, where was it, in Mars Hill or Marshall?
Oh my gosh, it was, in Madison County. It was amazing. And we were like, wow, the turnout was just huge for the real part of the state. And that goes to show people are engaged and they want someone who's willing to represent the entire state and not just our urban centers. And so I'm really excited about that. What it has shown us is the voters of North Carolina are in tune now, and they know that this is a critical time. We have redistricting coming up. We know that the last two cycles, the 2016 maps were racial gerrymanders. The 2018 North Carolina Senate, North Carolina House maps were knocked down by the court as partisan gerrymanders. And so with the decennial census, we're getting into redistricting, and we're really, really concerned because we see what's going on in Texas. It's just a matter of time before these red states will all start trying to pass this abortion ban. And so we can pick up there, and I'd be happy to share with you some new things that we're doing. We just launched a new campaign, the Dollar Door. So let's talk about all of that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So where's Donna? Oh, and do you know Donna Imam? Is it Imam or Imam? What? I can never say it right.
Imam.
I know of her. I know she ran an incredible race in a Texas district. So I'm excited about meeting her and hearing her take on the Texas abortion ban. But, it's absolutely ridiculous. For me, it's my body. It's my choice. I tweeted about my personal experience. I was pregnant. I had pregnancy-induced hypertension. And for Black women's maternal mortality rates in this country are worse than developing countries. And so I fell victim to that. And so it came to a point where the doctors asked me, well, if we can only save one of you, which one do you want us to save? I was at about 24, 25 weeks, and I knew the baby would be very premature. So I said, okay, if you have to make a decision, save my baby. But my husband couldn't make that decision. My children could not make that decision. It was my life at stake, and only I should be able to make that decision. Every woman should be able to make a decision about what happens to her body and when. And banning abortions after 6 weeks is absolutely ridiculous. When I look at the situation that I was in, I talked to my older children. One was 14 and one of my sons was 12. And they were like, okay, Mom, we don't want you to make that decision, not because they didn't want their baby brother to live, but because they wanted their mom. They didn't want to risk losing their mother. But all that was at stake. It was a very difficult decision. And many women face so many difficult decisions as it relates to this. And so we should have our reproductive healthcare rights. They're being trampled all over in the state of Texas, and it's just the beginning of what will be state by state. And so for me, as the next U.S. Senator from North Carolina, if I am elected, I am going to fight to the end for reproductive health care. I'm going to fight to codify Roe v. Wade, which I think needs to happen. It needs to happen right now. And so we did not do what we needed to do. We need to elect more women, more pro-choice women. And so I'm in this fight, have been in this fight for a while, and we really need to do something about this.
Yeah, I look at this as it's really a cautionary tale as to how the Democrats across the country in a lot of these red states have really dropped the ball in terms of overseeing judicial appointments. We really have, we tend to only focus on a Supreme Court appointment or the highest seats. And we don't really pay attention. And progressives are not great at campaigning year round. And it's like, if we don't have a candidate to get behind, if there's no Bernie Sanders, we're just off all roaming around, not focused. And the right focuses. They were focused. They made sure to take over the judiciary in this country systematically. And it was rubber stamped throughout Trump's entire presidency by Democrats.
Yeah.
And this is something that people are not really talking about. So when you want to look at why we're having this, it isn't just, I know that you'll be, shocked to hear this, Erica, but it isn't Susan Sarandon's fault, okay, that we're having an abortion ban in Texas. That's what people were blaming her, because if only she had supported Hillary, somehow that would have affected the state legislature in Texas. Anyway,
amazing.
I don't know, but it's really, if you want to look at it, every one of the Democrats in Congress that rubber stamped one of Trump's judicial appointees around the whole country, yes, those people need to be questioned on that choice that they've made. They really do. And we're not, no one's blaming them. And I think we do need to look at it like that, because they had an ability to at least be vocal, not just about Brett Kavanaugh, but basically every lower court appointment. This is a doing of everybody. It's not just a red thing. We allowed it.
You are right. You're absolutely right, Jen. And so I hear this old adage all the time. Republicans play chess and we play checkers. Instead of being, we've got to be, we've got to really start playing offense instead of always catching ourselves in the position of having to play defense or catch up and too late. They strategically took over state legislatures by being able to rig all of the districts across the nation. In North Carolina, it's really, really bad about that. Really bad about that. And so you not only had more conservative state legislatures, regardless of having President Biden in the White House and a Democratic-controlled U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, it's on the state level that we're seeing these attacks on voting rights, massive voter suppression bills, looking at taking away now reproductive health care rights. And so what we have to do is we've got to run a full court press, and we've got to run it on multiple fronts. And that's not what we have done. We really lost the opportunity when we did not have more judicial appointments to the federal court and to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? Let's wait for Donna to get we could talk about this again. But let's go into, we've got a few, we do something called news.
No, actually, there is one thing that I would like to talk about before we jump into that.
Okay.
Erica, obviously, Madison Cawthorn has been in the news lately. He, of course, would represent the district that you want to move to, which is interesting. But his, and this is somebody who is in a wheelchair. I mean, this is somebody who is disabled, and yet he's itching for a civil war. It amazes me to the extent to which how extreme some members of the Republican Party are really willing to go in order to maintain power. And this, to me, like what's happening in Texas, just seems like a power grab. And I'm curious because the dynamic in North Carolina is that it truly is a purple state. You have your blue parts, you have your red parts, but it seems like it's very neck and neck right now. Like it could go in any direction. And, Madison Cawthorn, to me, it just strikes me as that type of person who just wants to throw gasoline on the fire any chance he gets. He's another Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's another Matt Gaetz, just very incendiary, doesn't legislate, doesn't care, but in a way is just doing this for a career. He's basically trying to do whatever he can to build his brand. He has absolutely no consideration whatsoever for legislating. And I'm curious as to what that experience was like, canvassing in Western North Carolina and talking with his voters, quite frankly.
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of voters in Western North Carolina in that congressional district that have significant buyer's remorse. Everywhere we go, people are really, really concerned. Not only, Peter, you left out that he lost a battle with a tree when he was punching the tree, but we're like, the things that come out of his mouth are very, very just insidious. I mean, he is an insurrection sympathizer, and he actually said, and our campaign called him out out for that, because this is no place to allow those comments to be made by a sitting member of the United States House of Representatives, and no one challenged him on that. Quite frankly, we feel that he was issuing a threat. The Department of Justice should look into this, but also the Speaker of the House needs to seriously consider sanctions for him. He should be removed from office. For anyone to say that who's going to threaten in the next election that there will be bloodshed, that's just a continuation of January the 6th. It's appalling. It's egregious, and we have to stand up to that. Throughout Western North Carolina, there are a lot of voters who did not know of his storied past, his very problematic past, his attacks on women. And so as a survivor of sexual assault and sexual harassment, I have always had concerns about him being a representative in North Carolina. So I definitely feel that Madison Cawthorn, it represents the most extreme faction on the right of the Republican Party. But now it's time for Republicans to start holding him accountable for what he releases. Now, I'm not saying we need to infringe on his First Amendment freedoms, but the First Amendment freedoms do have limitations. You cannot incite riots, and you cannot issue threats of insurrection. And that's exactly what he is doing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he's a handsome fella, and he's.
I was gonna say he's good looking, but that, you know what? That's neither here nor there.
Unfortunately, to the lay voter who doesn't really pay much attention,
that's
like,
true.
oh, he's handsome. I guess I'll vote for that guy.
Well, it's sad but true. But that's neither here nor there. It's disappointing. I can only assume that my Ashevillean friends do not like him. I'm gonna go with that because it'll make me feel better tonight.
And corporate media does no favors by giving him a very, big platform, as they do for Marjorie Taylor Greene, as they do for Matt Gaetz, because guess what? They get clicks. And to them, that's all that matters. It's basically, hey, they're going to stoke the fire, but then people are going to watch. So, hey, we're not going to apologize for that. And that's basically how they do it. I just think that with what he did, what he said the other day, basically saying that we're heading towards a civil war and I'd welcome it. It's like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I just saw something that has been quantified. Farron Cousins talked about this, that the lightness of the consequences, the low punitive values that have been assessed for the people that participated in the January 6th insurrection compared to the punishments for people from the Black Lives Matter protests.
Right.
The disparities in the sentencing. And by the way, we're talking apples to apples, just so people are aware. So we're not talking about Black Lives Matter protesters that were arrested and then subsequently released. We're talking about people in terms of what their sentences are, the people that did participate in what they shouldn't have done, both sides. That the punishments were so disproportionately heavy. None of us are surprised by this. But when a representative comes out and talks like that, it's just, it really gives credibility to that kind of bias. It really does. It's really disgusting. I'm just saying.
I fully agree with you. And so it was a quite different response when you saw Black Lives Matter marches at the Capitol. They were tear gassed. And so they were rushed by the National Guard and the Capitol Police. And, the Capitol Police are there to protect us. And, even with the loss of life of Capitol policemen, that has not stopped the sympathizers of the insurrectionists from taking a stand constitutionally, but also ethically in what is right. They needed to receive much harsher sentences and, for that type of behavior. And if it had been Black Lives Matter members climbing on the walls in the chamber of the House,
they would have been dead on the steps. They would have been dead on the steps.
They wouldn't be living, to tell the story. They wouldn't even be living to face any type of consequences or for the offense or any infractions. And it's just ridiculous when you have members of my community, the BIPOC community, who sit here and see we live in the same United States of America, but it's really a tale of two cities. It's a tale of two different treatments by the same criminal justice system, which is really sad.
And we really should, everybody, we really need to, we should expect more from representatives because, that doesn't represent most people. It really doesn't. That doesn't represent most people. And that's one of the biggest problems, that our representatives don't properly represent us. They just, they just get stuck there.
Well, we still have not, we're still waiting for Donna, but I think what we'll do in the meantime is we'll add the news and the muse column, because there is a lot to talk about. And
we'll get back to the abortion thing.
Yeah.
So my first thing was
nice job with that picture, by the way.
Thank you. It's the United Corporations of America flag.
Jordan Cheriton, shout out.
Yeah, he always thought he has the real one hanging behind him. But I want to start talking about, I'm giving props. I got my little way to go sticker for Ilhan Omar, because she gets crap all the time for everything. And yet she is the only person that I can find that is speaking up for Daniel Hale and asking President Biden to issue a pardon for Daniel Hale. And this is something akin to, for everyone who knows, we're very supportive of everything having to do with Julian Assange and him being released. Whistleblowers are the lifeblood of a democracy. It really is. It's like our lifeblood. And, so she is the only one who spoke out for him. It's getting pushed aside. This man got 45 months, a sentence for 45 months for releasing the information about our crappy drone program that has a 90 billion casualty rate. And because we're embarrassed about that, that is basically why he was prosecuted. Same as all of it, same as Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, all of the people that are speaking truth. But kudos to Ilhan Omar. So, Erica, what are your thoughts on like the kind of crap that the squad gets versus any sort of recognition for the good things?
So to me, it's fundamentally down the lines of what we call misogyny, hegemonic masculinity. And so if you look at the way that the squad is always targeted, members of the squad are targeted for everything negative, and even if it's not even true, they're still going to be harassed about it. But when they do something good, no one ever wants to remember that. I have so much respect for the members of the squad. Also looking at the new additions like Cori Bush and her sitting out on the steps all night long. And so first thing I wanted to address, I wanted you to add to your list Reality Winner, who's North Carolina. And we look at intelligence and analysts and folks who have served their country and have worked really hard. Like Daniel, he was in the Air Force, so was Reality Winner. And when they tell the truth about the problems within our government, they're always sanctioned. And so it's a similar thing with the attempts at punishing the members of the squad. And Representative Omar has just received too much of that, been on the receiving end of too much of that. And to me, it speaks of the heightened level of misogyny and discrimination that women of color face in the white male-dominated Congress that we have. And so this all the more reason why we need to push to have the representative democracy. It's so important to have these other voices. And these folks, we have unique experiences having to navigate this discrimination and this bias and unfair treatment, not only, all of our lives, but in every institution that we experience in our lives, whether it's educational, whether it's financial institutions, in this case, political institutions. And so, I think it's, I just don't think it's fair. I think it's appalling. And people need to call out the discrimination for what it is. You need to tell the truth about it and confront it and stop being complicit and not standing up and speaking out against that. And I think more of her colleagues should be willing to go on record of speaking truth. There's so much power in our words, and stop being complicit and allow these things to happen and not say anything. Last thing I want to mention is that it was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King who said, "It's not the words of my enemies, it was the silence of my friends."
Oh yeah. And that's a great segue.
And he's always said, no, bring Donna in. I see her. But what Peter's always said is that if Ilhan Omar wasn't, a woman of color wearing a hijab, nobody would even say anything about her.
Nobody would say anything about what she said.
It's true.
And the worst thing about what happens with Ilhan, because not only does she, I mean, listen, people think that AOC takes crap. She doesn't take a fraction of what Ilhan does.
No,
and
the
when
death
people
threats
talk about,
and stuff that Ilhan Omar has.
I've been privy to some of this, and I could tell you that Ilhan, if anybody needed Secret Service, it's her.
It's crazy.
It's her. And so what's even more interesting, and Erica, you made a great point. You know, everyone likes to throw the arrows at Ilhan, but seldom do I ever hear, maybe with the exception of some members of the squad, there are no Democratic representatives who ever come to her defense, ever. Who ever step up and say, you know, this is really not right. She really is a good representative. And as it turns out, Ilhan is one of the most effective legislators on the Hill. That's another thing that no one talks about.
People don't know that.
You know? So as far as I'm concerned, that is a big deal.
What was it? She's like number 2.
No, she's like 4 or something. But who cares? The fact that she's
but
that
like,
high.
right?
My
like in terms of her getting legislation through. But yeah, nobody wants to talk about that. You know, it's like he dropped bad.
I believe she has the most votes out of all of her colleagues in her district. And so you look at the numbers that she is elected by, and certainly her constituents know she is working on their behalf. She's delivering for the folks who send her to Washington, D.C. And you know what? That's part of the problem. They don't like Ilhan because she's like Shirley Chisholm. She's unbossed, she's unbossed, and she's going to work hard to deliver for the hardworking people in her district who need someone who's going to champion them and not corporations.
And can we also give a little shout out to just the great voters of Minnesota, the Minnesotans, and just how they
had Jesse Ventura.
They had Jesse Ventura. They were the only state that voted against Ronald Reagan in 1984.
Seriously,
I mean, like
kudos to Minnesota.
They actually do have their ish together.
Look, okay, they have policing issues for sure.
But so does every state.
Yeah. So, let me introduce you. So, Donna, welcome. Erica said you've not met. So, Donna, this is Erica. Erica, Donna.
Very nice to meet you, Erica.
Wait, something with your audio.
Donna, Donna.
Your audio isn't right. Like something is wrong. It's like kind of crackly.
Even right now?
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah,
what is it? It's like really crackly. What are you using?
I'm just using my mic. Let me come back in.
Yeah.
Sure.
You hear that too, right, Erica?
Mm-hmm.
I do. I hear it.
Okay.
Yes, I hear it.
Okay.
Oh, listen, you have no idea. I mean, it was probably for like,
issues.
what was it for? For at least like 3 or 4 weeks, I guess it was.
Oh, there was the whole show we did where my microphone was unplugged. Like I said, I am not a tech person at all.
We went through a problem where we were having really bad connection issues, and then it turns out that what was it exactly?
We've had a lot of issues.
It was something with
we had cable problems.
I think Twitch was part of the problem.
I don't know.
Whatever
I don't know.
Listen,
Jason doesn't think so.
We would love to be a well-oiled machine, but we're certainly.
But our friend Mallory, our tech support here, is saying she should reconnect.
But it happens, we just work through it.
Yeah, well, for sure. And again, you're right. I mean, I think that I didn't really think about it from the perspective that you spoke from, but that's the difference between being a white male and a woman of color. You see things that I can't see
clearly,
and so when you point it out, it becomes that much clearer. And it really just hit me where it's like, yeah, they don't give a damn about her. They would just as easily cast her aside, and she's one of the best representatives in the country.
But they don't care about that, and as somebody who ran for Congress in a very Jewish district, I was always sort of walking on eggshells about even addressing anything having to do with Ilhan. I don't give a shit now. I think she's awesome. I think she's got like giant cojones, and I have mad respect for her. And then there's the fact that she spent 4 years in a Somalian refugee camp. It's like people think they're going to threaten her by talking nasty about her on Twitter, and she's going to be all scared of that. Are you kidding me? She spent 4 years in a refugee camp. Like that is something that you can't even possibly comprehend, and what she's been through. So, I mean, that's why I think she's just badass to me. That's what I think.
Donna, let's try the audio.
See if my mic is working better now. Is that any good?
It's so bad.
I think that the best thing to do is probably... Yeah, I think the best thing is probably to just log out and reboot. That's probably the best thing, and then just come back in. That's what Mallory said. You just got to reconnect the call That's probably the best
Call
way to
back
do it.
in.
And if for whatever reason you come back and there's still the problem, you can just do it directly through your phone if that would be easier, and that probably would alleviate the problem too. So let's try that.
All right. So we're just removing.
Yep.
Okay. So that was my Ilhan Omar, my soapbox about Ilhan Omar, and plus I really like that picture of her, and that she looks cute.
No, and you know what? I do observe her social media, particularly her Instagram, and everything about her is positivity. You know, she just put a wonderful post up about going to the county fair. And that's one thing I love about, the upper Midwest and just that part of the country. I mean, even in New Jersey, the county fair is a big thing. In North Carolina, the county fair is a big thing.
I love the county fair. Indiana's was the best when I lived. Indiana, I will say, when I lived there, that was out of the ones I've been to was hands down. They take their fried food extremely seriously.
And you know what, Erica, before Donna comes back, can you talk about the experience? Because the thing that's interesting about North Carolina is that it doesn't have, I mean, you can kind of call Charlotte it's a mid-major city is what I would call it. But small town America really exists in North Carolina, basically throughout. And it is a really amazing experience getting to go to 100 different counties and meet with a whole bunch of different people, not just with the people who are in Asheville, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Wilmington. There's a lot in between that I think a lot of people don't get to experience. And, like I said, the county fair, that's very important. And we kind of just, so much of what the Democratic Party has done is just forgotten about small town America, and the GOP has scooped it for a very long time. And there is a way to change that, because if you're
for a very long time. Yeah, Peter, you raise an interesting point. And so it's no wonder that I was the only Democrat in the North Carolina Senate who was elected off of the 2016 and 2018 gerrymandered districts that represents a 100% rural district. I don't even have a micropolitan in my district, no small towns or whatever, or, the micro cities. And so what we know about North Carolina is that of the 100 counties, 80 of them are rural. As we have traveled around the state, rural voters are very concerned about lack of access to universal broadband. We know that universal basic income is tremendous for small towns because it's local economic investments, which are so important for allowing these communities to have the economic opportunities so that we don't continue to lose population in these rural towns. They have to be serviced. They've been so underserved. And what we have found is that in our 100 county tour, we didn't just go and just meet with Democrats, in a room. For us, this was about building a coalition, a diverse coalition of working class folks. And that's what we find in many of these rural communities. They are interested in clean air, clean water, a way of life. We visited a lot of farmers markets. We visited a lot.
We love doing that.
It's the best.
Yes. And so I love doing that. I grew up on my family farm, but this is where you have the intersection of rural and urban centers and finding out what people really need to make this government work for all of us, not just the wealthy, not just the well-connected. Democrats will never expand their majority in the U.S. Senate if they don't start winning in states that are in the South, and also states that have high rural populations. And so that's why we're really excited about our campaign and what we're offering.
I think that's awesome. People don't realize that. I was just talking about that today, that there actually are places in this country where people have different values. And by that, I mean, like when I'm in Waynesville and it's 5 o'clock and there's people out walking, but the stores are closed. Somebody that would be from down here would say, oh my God, look at all that business they're missing. If they were open, they'd be making all this more money. But yet their priority is to go home and have dinner with their family and not make more money. And that to people like in urban areas, like where you're just so struggling to live, is a very foreign concept. And I think that that's something that you find in rural places. There is a much stronger sense of community. There is a much stronger sense of family. And it's just very different. And I think that that's really important. Donna, how's it sounding?
Does it sound any better?
Unfortunately, no.
It's bad.
Let's try the cell phone. Let's try the cell phone. I think that's probably going to be the better bet.
Wow, I've never had this issue before. One last thing I want to try is maybe just changing up the actual mic that I'm using. Maybe that'll
It could be. Yeah, it's probably the mic. I mean, that would be my guess.
Yeah, the mic is definitely the problem. It's not the connection; it's the microphone.
Yeah, your image is fine. That's not the issue at all.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? How's it now?
It just sounds garbled.
It's muffled. It's very muffled.
I see. Okay. Yep. We're gonna have to do the phone. I'm not really sure what's going on. I guess I'll mute you here and call you on the phone.
That's fine.
That works.
That's fine. So let's go on. Okay. So which story do you want to go to? We would definitely want, Donna, we had briefly talked about the Texas abortion ban, but obviously we want to get back into that. But do you want to do this? Because this is one of the ones you forwarded me.
Well, again, the corporate lobbyists are always going to upend, and that of course.
So we're talking about the infrastructure bill. And the $3.2 trillion infrastructure bill.
No, Donna, what you need to do is just take the link that you can open from your phone. If you open the email, and you can do the Zoom link directly through your phone.
You mean StreamYard?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Yeah. So I would just log off and do it directly through your phone. That's going to be the easiest way, and that should
then you'll have your phone microphone
alleviate any issue with the audio.
So I didn't read this article. You forwarded it to me. So, I mean, what is it that they're pointing out? I mean, obviously, corporate lobbyists are not going to like this infrastructure bill.
No, and again,
it helps too many people. We can't have that.
Because there's three specific elements of the bill that they are trying to gut. Obviously, anything that involves climate action, which is going to hurt big oil. They are going to also do everything they can to stop the expansion of Medicare to include hearing, dental, and vision. And they don't want to lower the age to 60. So they want to take those three things out of the bill and do whatever they have to do in order to stop it from happening. And that is the only way that this is going to, it's not going to take. Right. I mean, that's really what it comes down to is, will they hold the line? And right now it's up to the squad to hold the line. And of course, Bernie, who's out there campaigning in these states, trying to convince people that it's very important.
Yeah.
But of course, it's only Bernie who's doing it.
Right.
What else is new? And this
is why we need non-corporate senators like Erica.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. And we have Morgan Harper on.
Yes, Morgan Harper is great. And so this is what we need. We need people who are going to fight for the folks that no one else is fighting for. And so I'm really disappointed in what I'm hearing coming out from Senator Joe Manchin about not wanting to support the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill and reconciliation portions of that. It's absolutely ridiculous. As a single mom who was working, I had to pay childcare. My childcare at the time, now my children, are adults now, but in 92 through 97, when I was paying for childcare for young children, it was $1,100 a month. It was more than my rent and my car note combined. How many moms cannot work a job because they can't afford the childcare? There are a lot of women who had to exit the workforce with the pandemic, and now they can't go back to work because childcare is ridiculous. The child tax credit that was part of the CARES Act was very instrumental in making sure families could do what they need to do and take care of those childcare expenses so that they could go to work. We need universal pre-K. We need free community college. And so I just don't understand why we can't get this infrastructure bill passed. We need Medicare for all, but we definitely need to start off by lowering the age and adding dental, adding vision, adding long-term care. And so this is about taking care of your folks, showing where your priorities are. And so I think it's ridiculous. It's very frustrating that we don't have that support to get this legislation passed. But if I'm elected as U.S. Senator, I'm going to fight for the people who need somebody to fight for them, the people who have been left behind. And so I don't know if we want to check Donna's mic.
Yeah, Donna, what's happening now?
Well, you should have my audio and my video.
Oh, there you are. Perfect. Look at that.
and again, I think
I don't know what the issue was, but hopefully you can hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Now we're good.
Okay.
Now we're good. So do you want to, let's talk.
No, and again, I think they're going to do everything in their capacity to stop any progressive piece of significant legislation to pass, because if it were to happen, I think it would really galvanize a movement again. I think it would really inspire people to get more involved because they don't see electoral politics. Again, there's so much of this nihilism on the left right now. It's becoming, and of course, you got a lot of people in what we're doing who are taking advantage of that, who are just stoking that fire, but not recognizing that you need an inside and an outside strategy. You need both. You can't just have one and not the other.
I wanted to go back to something you said when you said stoking these fires. I mean, look at it. We've had forests on fire throughout California. We had an ocean on fire. We had unprecedented flooding in New York.
Yeah.
And in Pennsylvania from Hurricane Ida. And so if we don't want to take climate action now, what is it going to take? We already got the report from the United Nations. And so we know we have to take bold action right now to address global warming. And it's just atrocious that we have people in Congress now who don't want to include that in the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, agreed.
We action now if we're going to sustain this planet. And so these big oil CEOs who have bought out people like Senator Manchin, we need to let them know that we need to draw the line. The buck stops here. No longer are you going to risk this entire planet for your greed, for your corporate greed.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Donna, where are you?
On that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was making sure that I had another earphone ready to go just in case. So yeah, I'm here. I'm here from the great state of Texas, here in Austin, Texas.
So, but do you want to talk about the abortion ban since Donna's
I think it's obviously very important. And, you know, somebody even joked today that, you know, now that this has been implemented, it's almost going to deter people from, you know, relocating from other states to Austin.
Can you explain what this ban is for people who don't understand? Because I know what it is, that it involves civil litigation. It's not a criminal penalty, but will you explain, Donna, the lunacy of how this gives standing to complete strangers to sue people for what they do with their own body?
Yeah, so let's back up just a little bit to tell you what's really going on. So my name is Donna, Imam, and I'm talking to you from Austin, Texas. I ran for U.S. Congress out of Austin, Texas last time. Texas is extremely gerrymandered, so Austin is sliced into 6 pieces like a pizza, and I ran in the Northwest Austin district, Texas 31. Now, what has been happening in Texas is a long time coming. A lot of people are looking at what happened today, and they're bringing in lots of different items to argue about on social media. What's been happening in the long term is very strategic and very specific organizing around how to pass these extremely stringent and ludicrous, cruel bills. There's no other way to really define them. And this has been happening for decades, where the GOP has been funding organizations like the Federalist Society to first, ensure that they have the right people in the court system. So that's number one. Number two, they have invested in gerrymandering at the state level in multiple states across this country, not just Texas. And they accomplished this very well in Texas. So I'm giving you this background to tell you how we got to this bill. It did not happen overnight. It's not something that just happened today. Now, earlier on in this year, Texas had a regular legislative session, and during that legislative session, this bill was introduced. It's nicknamed the quote-unquote heartbeat bill, because it basically bans women's health care. There's no other way to put it. It does not allow you to have any other type of, what should I say, ability to have privacy in the healthcare decisions that you make. That's what it is. It is a targeted bill that goes after women's rights, period. That's number one. Now, in the normal legislative session, the regular legislative session, this bill was passed. And now you might be asking, well, where were the Democrats? Where were the Democrats when they passed this bill? Well, I'll tell you, Texas has what's called a GOP trifecta, meaning they have a majority in the Texas State House, they have a majority in the Texas State Senate, and of course we have our very wonderful Texas State Governor, Governor Abbott. We have the Lieutenant Governor, who, remember, a week and a half back, blamed Black Texans for the COVID, the mismanagement of the pandemic in Texas and the rising number of COVID cases, even though his data has absolute, no relevancy to that blame game that they're playing. And of course, we have the indicted AD, of our state, Ken Paxton. So that's who we're up against in Texas. Now, what happened last month when the Texas Democrats, they broke quorum to stop a voter suppression bill from going through? They were only able to do this, and I bring this up because it's relevant to this bill, okay? The reason that they broke quorum, because Texas Democrats basically have no leverage, zero leverage in the House or Senate to be able to actually negotiate anything with their GOP counterparts. It doesn't matter whether it's negotiated in committee or whether there are amendments or whether there's debates on the floor. It doesn't matter if there is a talking filibuster for 15 hours. That happened in Texas, as you know. It doesn't matter. The Texas GOP can unequivocally pass any law that they want. And they passed this heartbeat law back on May 19th. It went to the governor's desk and it got passed. Now, here's the crazy thing about it. The reason that they passed this bill the way they did, and Jen, you brought up the point you wanted me to originally explain, which is, how can private citizens go after anyone who is seeking reproductive health care? And here's how. They intentionally put a clause in here that no state official can actually enforce this law. Who can enforce this law? Private citizens. So now they have taken your neighbor, the average citizen in Texas, and they've deputized them to enforce the law. So what does that mean? That means anybody can sue any person.
Something happened. I'm not hearing you. What happened? Wait, Donna, I don't do you hear her?
No, I don't. I can't hear her.
Something happened.
Donna, your sound went out again.
Donna, you've got no sound right now. She doesn't hear me. Donna, you don't have sound. Maybe she doesn't have audio. I don't know. We can't hear. She's not understanding. Tell her. We can't hear. Does she see us? We can't hear. Can't hear. You stopped. You went out. Like, we can't hear. Can you hear me? Something happened. All of a sudden, it just went totally out. Like, not choppy, not anything, just gone. Can't hear. Oh, I'm having a day myself, so none of this is surprising to me. I'm having a day, and it's storming like crazy, and, but I don't know what's going on there. But we were just getting to the good part. We were just getting to the good part of the story about the law. But this is crazy, right, Erica?
Can you even hear me?
Now we can. Now we hear you.
Wow,
but
it
went just totally blank.
Oh, I don't know when it went blank. Tell me.
Okay, so you were, Erica, no, unmute, Erica.
Okay, you were talking about the Democrats not being able to, because, they left quorum because they're not able to stop. And
now we had Jasmine Crockett on. Just so you know, Donna, we had Jasmine Crockett on when they did the walkout to talk about that, because that was really, they were doing it against the voting rights or the lack of voting rights, the voting suppression bill. But so, yeah, that's where you left off.
And deputizing your neighbor, which is really deputizing the average person to be able to sue.
Yeah, it's crazy. I still do not see how in the world that is something that's going to be, that it can be constitutional. It's so bizarre to me that would qualify as standing, because how would you show damages? Like, I guess I'm not understanding how, like, what's the recourse? Like, what would their recourse be? They get money, but what is that money based on? Normally, money damages, no, now we can't hear you, but you lost, the whole audio thing went away.
Just calling for the phone.
She was.
No, I'm saying is.
She was on her phone, but then that went blank, and then she left. Now the phone one is gone. You would know this, but you had to eat.
Yes,
Jen, I have been hearing different scenarios. And so what's crazy is I was reading about the bill that there was an amendment that was proffered to try to have the carve out of exemptions for minors who were raped. Young girls who were impregnated through molestation or rape or sexual assault. But that amendment did not pass. And so even though a woman is sexually violated, she still has to carry the baby to term. And so it would appear that the rapist or the rapist family member could sue a woman who tries to terminate that pregnancy. So
yeah,
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So go back to the deputized citizens, because I still can't figure out how they have standing, and I can't figure out how they can show damages in a civil suit to warrant $10,000. Like,
and there's already, like, apparently tens of thousands of people that are already, like, pranking the hell out of these.
Yeah, this is a disaster.
Yeah, this is going to be bad.
So I'll explain to you the way they wrote this bill. They specifically made it so that these lawsuits this law cannot be enforced. This ban on women's health care. Can you still hear me? Okay, all right, good. This ban on women's health care cannot be enforced by state governments. So, for example, the state AG can't go after anybody. They did this on purpose, and what they did is they deputized the average individual in Texas, including, your neighbor, to be able to go sue anybody that they suspect of violating this law. And they did this intentionally. Here's the reason they did this. And the $10,000 is written into the law. So it says if somebody sues a individual or a provider, or they sue someone who is helping you get to your provider, to your healthcare provider. So, for example, let's say you're trying to somebody's driving you, a friend is driving you to a healthcare provider. They can also be sued by just any individual in the state of Texas. And if they win that lawsuit, so they can prove that you have violated this law, which means you sought reproductive health care after 6 weeks of pregnancy. If they can prove that in the court of law, then they are to be given no less than $10,000. That is just written into the law. It's not, they don't have to show any damages. All they have to show is that you have violated the law. Now get this, the reason that they did this is because when they knew that this would be fought in the Supreme Court of the United States, because this is unconstitutional. It's taking away your constitutional rights under Roe v. Wade, okay? Number one, so they knew it was going to be fought, and there will be a case brought. But they did this intentionally because the United States federal legal system, the Supreme Court of the United States, can bring down judgment on the legal body of a state. So legal, the state officers per se, right? But they cannot do anything about individuals. So there's no way for them to strike this law down if they've deputized individuals. So this is why they did this intentionally. And the point that I was trying to make earlier is that this has been a long time coming. They have been funding the Federalist Society for decades. They have been filling all the legal avenues with judges across circuit courts and across state courts, and every single layer of legal protections that we have in this country. They have put conservative judges in there, and they have not just put in conservative judges, they have groomed these people. They have specifically handpicked people who believe in the GOP political strategy. And that's how they were picked. It's not like they politicized judges. They picked political people to become judges first. Then they gerrymandered the state, and not just Texas, but across the country between 2000, the year 2000, year 2020. If you look at the number of states where the GOP legislator has full control of drawing the districts, you will see that we are in big trouble for the next entire decade. So if you're just starting out and you're graduating and you're in your early 20s, they have messed up the next decade for you. You are getting no representation. If you are 30 years old right now, you have no representation for the next decade, because you can do all the organizing you want, but you will not get representation in the United States House of Representatives, because your vote has been gerrymandered. Your vote and your representation has been taken away from you through partisan gerrymandering. And in 2019, the Supreme Court of the United States said, partisan gerrymandering, we don't have any say in that. If there was racial gerrymandering, now we might have something to say. So that's where we are.
Well, the thing about this particular law, from my perspective, just from a guy's perspective, the idea that that you are not allowed any exemption, even for rape or incest. How does that even get to the table, as far as I'm concerned?
You, just like what Donna said, you have all of these right-wing people groomed to take those positions. They've been planning this for a really long time. And I said it before, and the Democrats have been asleep the whole time. They've let this happen. We all did.
And in 2020, Tom DeLay, I don't know if you know who Tom DeLay is. He used to be the whip in the United States Congress right there, and then the House of Representatives. He basically strategized this whole idea of gerrymandering to make sure, because, in the early 90s, many of us are too young to remember this, but, Texas had a Democratic trifecta. Democrats had, control of the House, the Senate, and they had a Democratic governor.
Good Ann Richards. You had Ann Richards.
That's right. That's right. And people will be like, what? Are you serious? I thought Texas was red. No, Texas has been gerrymandered, and it has been strategically crafted to become red. This is why, if we do not stop playing politics, we will lose our representation. And right now we're witnessing the death by 1,000 cuts of basic rights. This will just get worse and worse and worse. And one day we'll wake up and we'll wonder, how did we get there? Just like we're wondering right now, how did we get to this, cruel bill? Because cruelty is the point when there's no exception for rape and incest. That's how horrendous these people are. They don't have any intent of doing anything good for anybody in this country. Their whole goal is to ensure that they have power and they have full control and authority over what you can do. They don't believe in individuality. They say they do. They don't believe in small government. They say they do. They believe in power, and they believe in having complete control over you.
And this is a relegation of women to second-class citizenship in this country. And we are 100 years from women even earning the right to vote. We are going backwards by decades. And who are the victims of this? Marginalized communities, BIPOC people, and women.
Yeah, I was just going to say to you, this reeks of misogyny always. And always when there's situations like this where women are being basically persecuted, it's always going to be women of color that get it worse. It's women who don't have resources that get it worse, because the reality is wealthy white women will still be able to get what they need to get. That's just how it works. They'll be able to get what they need to get.
Yeah, Jen, there is an interesting part to this, right? You are right about that. Obviously, these types of laws, they only impact, people of low income or people of the lowest income. But I think there's something interesting going on here. And I really hope that some major change will come out of this. And this is how I think it's going to happen. Right now in Texas, we have, the highest number of people that have no insurance. We're talking about zero. Forget health insurance, nothing. They have no health care, no health insurance, nothing. Okay. That's over 5 million people. 1 in 4 women of childbearing age have no health insurance. They have no health care, regardless of reproductive health care. They have zero health care. Nobody cares about that. The GOP doesn't care about that. The GOP runs Texas. They have a trifecta here. Do they have a solution for healthcare? No. People who vote GOP, they also know this. They can see this. You can blame the Democrats all you want, and you can blame everybody else, but the GOP does not have a solution. But this will create problems even for middle-class women. I believe middle-class families and even upper-middle-class families will not only experience some financial challenges, but they will experience some difficulty in being able to get reproductive health care. And this will have some impact. But you are right that obviously this impacts a much smaller part of the population directly. It actually impacts all of us. This is one puzzle piece of taking away all of our rights, by the way. But because it impacts a smaller subset, people want to ignore it. What I say is this is a long time coming, and this is still just the beginning. You have no idea what is coming in the next decade. You think about healthcare, it's going to get worse. You think about climate change, it's going to get worse. You think about voting rights, it's going to get worse. Every single area, they will exercise their ultimate authority because they can, and they want to hold on to this power.
Well, I mean, is there anything more you want to go into about?
I just think it speaks to the greater problem here, which is, we have this extremely nihilistic movement on the left right now, which is trying to deter people from getting involved. A lot of people had sort of a political awakening over the last 5 years, and a lot of them are attempting to kind of run away from it now. And you have these sort of, scorched earthers that are becoming a part of the independent media circuit who are trying to fan the flame of it and make money in the process. And to me, that's a very dangerous animal when we're trying to maintain some semblance of not just a democracy, but a constitutional republic at this point. I mean, we're completely desecrating it every day. And on top of that, the freaking planet is on fire.
Yeah.
And it's flooding. I mean, it's like something literally out of the Bible. I mean, we're talking about, end of days here. That's what it feels like. If you look outside, I mean, my state of New Jersey, North Jersey's underwater in a number of places. New York City's underwater. Good friend of ours, good friend of the show, Isaiah James, is running for Congress in Brooklyn. He had to leave his house. It's underwater. I mean, people got to get their ish together already. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we may not be the smartest people alive, but I'd like to think that the four of us have some, real common sense here about what needs to be done.
It isn't taking horse medicine.
No, it's not taking horse medicine.
You know what needs to be done? We need to abolish the filibuster. We've got to end the filibuster so that we can pass this common sense legislation to provide health care for folks who deserve it. It's a basic human right. We need to protect voting rights. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to pass the For the People Act. The For the People Act will deal with the gerrymandering, the redistricting process that they've always baked in incumbency protection. And the GOP, like a stealth plan, ran this and organized a long time ago. Donna, we had shared some of that information. And so it's good to see that we're all on the same page. But ending the filibuster, we've got to abolish the filibuster so we can deliver a bold, progressive platform that's going to address and take immediate action to promote climate action. We need to abolish the filibuster so we can have reproductive health care rights. We need to abolish the filibuster so that we can provide voter protections and voter rights to people in this country. We deserve that.
So
Yeah.
I have a little bit of good news for everybody on here. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. So we know that Manchin and Sinema have made it very clear that they are not going to abolish the filibuster. So what do we do in that case? And here's, I think, the light at the end of the tunnel, per se, because we need something, right? We need something to get behind. First of all, I appreciate what every single person is doing out there. I don't think there is just only one way to win this fight. And I don't think there's only one way to reverse the damage that is being done. I think we have to pursue every single avenue. But here's what I would like to bring up. There's no gerrymandering statewide. Okay. There's no gerrymandering statewide. In 2018, we came very close to flipping this district and having a Democratic senator with Representative Beto O'Rourke. Now, say what you will, whether you agree or disagree with his policy platform. But the point I'm trying to make is this, that you can't blame gerrymandering or redistricting when it comes to statewide races. And we had many of those opportunities, both in 2020 in states where even President Biden actually won, but the Democratic senator that was running did not make it. And the Democrats need to look inside and be introspective to figure out, how do we win these statewide races? Because not only can we tilt the Senate to our advantage, where we're not depending on just one or two senators that are adamant that they will not, remove the filibuster, but we would have some leverage. So my point is, yes, the system is not working for us. And there are many people that have many ideas on how to go after the system: direct action, removing the filibuster, abolishing the Senate, expanding the courts. But given the current system right now as is, the way that our hands are tied, how can we fight the current system? And we can fight the current system. For example, I'll talk about Texas because that's where what I know best. But if you, in 2018, were able to get 50,000, just 50,000 more votes from the bluest cities in Texas: San Antonio, Austin, Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, and Houston, we would have had a Democratic senator. And it starts by flipping these statewide races. And it starts by ensuring that we absolutely deliver on that. The second thing I want to bring up is, it doesn't matter how hurt we are of what happened over the last several years and how we believe that the system is not to our favor. We have to find a way to win with the system we have until the system is changed. I'm not saying that we shouldn't change the system. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that even within the system, there are opportunities for us to overcome. We know for a fact that the voter turnout in Democratic primaries is extremely low. In some cases, it is lower than 15%. We are talking about less than 40,000 voters, less than 30,000 voters in U.S. congressional races in states like Texas. Those are opportunities to elect the right person, the person that's going to go out and fight for single-payer healthcare coverage for every single person in this country. And we ignore those. Most Democrats are not paying attention to primary races. So that's number one. Number two, we have a huge opportunity in blue districts to elect Democrats up and down the ballot in local races. Some of these local races are won with hundreds of votes. I'm saying that some of these city council races have less than 2,000 people that come out. These are inexpensive races to win. And if you can put good people in those slots and win those, you can slowly turn this around. There are so many opportunities for us being lost across this country. And that's what we need to focus on until the system is changed.
I think you've brought up, and I think you bring up a really good point. And this is something that I think speaks to an even greater problem on the Democratic side than on the Republican side. The Republicans value every person at the lowest point, but consider them to be as important as anything because they build the foundation. And that, of course, are the precinct committee leaders, the city council members, even people that are on the county commission and places like that. The Democrats do not get up for things like that. They get way too caught up with the candidates at the tippy top. And it's like, that's not where change happens. You have to build a foundation and infrastructure. Now, some states have them. I actually think New York is one of the best, but for the most part, it doesn't exist. And that is something that we've noticed here at the local level. Broward County is one of the bluest counties based on population in the country. It's like fourth, I believe. And we haven't made quorum with our local DEC in over 4 years. Like, try explaining that. There is no way to explain it. It's a joke. And of course, partially it's done on purpose, let's be honest. And then on the other part, it's because people are just not involved the way that they need to be. And if they were, be surprised at how many things they could get done. Governor DeSantis would not be getting away with everything that he wants to do. And people are like, well, how does DeSantis get away with it? It's pretty obvious why he gets away with it, because the Democratic Party in Florida has no real solid infrastructure. And they cave horrifically to corporate special interests, just as the GOP does. The difference, the GOP have their ish together and the Democrats don't. That's pretty much it.
Well, and our state Democratic Party is led by a Republican.
That is true.
So that's. But somebody mentioned in the chat about, will we mention super delegates? I'd be happy to. I think it's the least democratic thing about the Democrats. That's something that I've been saying for years. Yeah. I think it's outrageous. It's the same concept that we have here with our weighted vote in our state party, where some people have a more valuable vote than other people, and that concept is inherently elitist and inherently not democratic. So I am opposed to any concept of superdelegates. Our representative was very clear in 2016 about how if they didn't have superdelegates, then regular people would get to determine the outcome of the election, and we can't have that. And yet that was sort of glossed over, like nobody even said that.
And I think that just speaks more to where the party has moved, you know, and Erica, again, in your experience, and Don, I'm sure you have as well, you know, you get out there and you realize that the people who more or less are currently in charge of the Democratic Party are people that really only value urban and upper class suburban voters. They really do not care about rural voters at all. And probably 80% of the landmass in this country is rural. So trying to just cast aside like it doesn't mean anything is just ridiculous.
Well, they definitely don't care about labor.
No.
So, you know, you're not, it's not just, I mean, working people, working labor. There's no labor in this country anymore.
People, working families, the working class. These are the ones that are being left behind by the Democratic Party. And so as I was sharing earlier, Georgia has shown us just what can be done when we organize all over the states, all over the country in these rural areas. And so to Donna's point, dealing with the system as it is now, we have to have, we need unprecedented organization. We got to organize, we have to register voters, we have to be preemptive, we have to be proactive, we have to play offense. So already to fight against all this voter suppression, we're going to have voters. We're going to have to educate voters, and we're going to have turnout like never before, because that little bit of turnout can make a difference in these statewide races so that we can flip blue. And it's important and critical to understand we're not going to be able to expand that narrow majority in the U.S. Senate without winning states in the South.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, to basically cast aside like a dozen states like they don't matter is okay, you know, tie your hands behind your back and see how far that gets you. And again, I think a lot of it also speaks to the fact that, you know, despite all the issues that the GOP has, they get younger, they rotate, they get new people in. The Democratic leadership in particular, you know, they're all 80.
It's a generational problem.
It is.
And you know what? It's not so much their age, although I do think that there is an element of that. It's how long they've been sitting in that position.
Yes.
That to me, because if somebody is older and is having a second career and wants to get into public service and serve their community and they're caring about their people, I don't care how old they are. Like, so I don't want to, it's not really an age thing. It's a mindset thing. But I think a lot of that happens when people are sitting there for as long as they've been sitting there.
And then, of course, that's why somebody like Mitch McConnell is actually more of an anomaly on the GOP side, whereas somebody like Nancy Pelosi is more of the commonality on the Democratic side, in that you just sit in office forever. And that's why it becomes very interesting when, you know, we look at these, you know, again, Donna, you know it well, when you challenge a Democratic incumbent, you get people that literally throw their hands up in the air like, how dare you? This is not how we do business on our side, and this and that. And it's like, no, if you want to run for office, you have every right to do it, whether it's against the GOP or it's against your own party. If you feel that they're not doing a good enough job, this isn't something where you just get to sit there and do whatever you want for the rest of your life.
But
and
I
think
the interesting thing to bring up for your listeners or your viewers is that it's not just you know, this new age of where you have people going up against incumbents. I don't know if people are aware, but many people who are in the United States Congress right now, actually went up against incumbents and won. And case in point, Representative Ro Khanna.
How did I know where you were going, Donna? How did I know where you were going?
and
we love Ro. We love Ro.
That was well before Justice Democrats or brand new Congress or anybody else like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And even a bigger name is heir to the leadership of the House Party. Hakeem Jeffries took out an incumbent Democrat. So this has been done over and over and over again. It's a free country. Anybody can run for office. The important thing is, are people paying attention to who is running for office? Are people coming out to vote? There's a lot of conversation about voter registration, right? Georgia, a lot of voter registration. We saw the piece of news, 97% voter registration, which is amazing. Now in Texas, you can do auto voter registration when you change your driver's license or you update your driver's license. So for example, if you move from one county to another, or you come in from out of state, when you register when you get your new driver's license, you can register to vote automatically at the same time. So it should be a lot easier to register to vote right now, because you almost can't do anything without a driver's license, right? After you move, it's required. In fact, if you get pulled over for a ticket or you get a traffic citation and your address does not match on your driver's license, you can be ticketed in the state of Texas. So I think in many ways we can overcome the voter registration challenges. What we do have still a challenge with in the state of Texas, and not just in the state of Texas, but across this country, is voter turnout, and specifically voter turnout in primary elections. At the end of the day, we have to overwhelm the primary system. We have to overwhelmingly come out for the candidate that is going to advocate for our policies, not just sign on the dotted line, not just have it on their website, not just co-sponsor a bill, actively advocate for our policies in Congress. That is the most important thing. If your candidate, if your representative is not actively advocating on a day-to-day basis, convincing other Congress people in Congress to advocate for these policies, then they're not doing their job. And I'll give you, for your viewers, I want to leave you with one piece of data. I don't know if you guys know this, but United States congressmen and congresswomen who are elected, they get a budget.
Screen.
Single
Screen freeze.
constituent. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we heard. Well, we heard. We didn't hear how much. What's the budget?
I'm not sure exactly what the budget is, but it's enough to write a letter to every single constituent 3 or 4 times a year. So think about it this way: your congressperson could be writing a letter to every single person in their district explaining what single-payer healthcare is, how it would lower the cost of healthcare for every single person. They could be explaining that we don't have enough primary care physicians. They could be explaining how the cost of education is crazy. And even if we did away with student loan debt for every single person, that will still leave the kids that are going to college. If you have kids that are in high school right now going to college, they don't have a way out. College is extremely expensive. And the question is why? Why do we have universities in our country that have endowments that are in the billions of dollars? Think about it. Endowments in the billions of dollars, and tuition. What are they doing with your tuition? They're using your tuition for what they should be using their endowment dollars for. So this is an opportunity. So if you have, let's say there are 212 Democrats in the United States Congress today, how many of them in deep blue districts have written a letter about how much money single-payer healthcare, Medicare for all would save Americans? And if they haven't, why not? They get free money. They get free money from the United States government. So
but they're not, they don't act as activists, Donna. They don't be activists.
This is not even activism. This is not even activism. This is advocacy. You're not even doing direct action.
Right. Well, and now you're assuming that they support Medicare for all, because a lot of them are on the payrolls of big pharma and private insurance companies, and so they don't want to tell you about the benefits.
I could assure you that our congressperson would never do such a thing.
How many co-sponsors of the Medicare for all bill do we have? Have they written a letter to their constituents about their support? That's the real question. Yes, I completely agree with cheese sandwich. I also love cheese sandwiches, by the way. So I love you, cheese sandwich. And I also agree with you that education should be free because technology should be driving the cost of education down to zero. Down to zero.
Yeah. Well, education, I've always said this. No, go ahead.
That's part of the $3.5 trillion reconciliation budget. It is free community college, free and universal tuition free pre-K, which is what we need for the children, for the next generations to come. So I fully agree. There is the capacity to do that. They all have a publication budget that they can use to update their constituents, write to the constituents in their district and inform them of that. But how many of them are going to do it when they're owned and operated by this corporate interest and big pharma and oil executives and fossil fuel executives and
we say
insurance
it all the time.
CEOs?
Yep, we say it all the time. The unifying issue of our time is corporate special interest money. That is what defines us, regardless of which party or wherever you stand.
The United Corporations of America.
And that is ultimately what will determine where we're able to go moving forward. We must elect representatives that are non-corporate, and that starts at the local level all the way up through the U.S. Congress of the House and the Senate. It takes time, but people have to stay committed.
I'm holding out hope to get a non-corporate president someday.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, not in my lifetime,
we were close.
probably.
We got close, but it didn't happen. Nevertheless, I am optimistic, as you are, Donna, about the future. I still hold out hope that we can make this work. But we need to become, as we said earlier in the podcast, a more well-oiled machine of a movement. And right now, the non-corporate left is not a well-oiled machine. But if we can play a small role in uniting as many voices, as many candidates, as many activists, as many labor leaders as we possibly can in the movement that we are starting, and that we hopefully will cultivate and grow and get even better at as we go forward, I think that that's going to be the key. And that is really what we're trying to do here. We want to have as many voices that can be heard as possible. It really does make a difference to have these conversations. It's also been very informative, Donna, to hear about what really is going on with this Texas abortion bill.
It's horrifying.
It is horrifying, but there are some silver linings.
We're living in the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, there are some silver linings that are involved, and there is a possibility that it could backfire, which is obviously what we hope will happen. There are no guarantees, but we have to try to maintain whatever positive viewpoint we can. And as you alluded to, statewide elections cannot be gerrymandered. Everybody has the opportunity to vote. And again, it is a civic duty. It is our civic duty to be involved and to not be laissez-faire about it or to be nihilistic about it. I know it's easy to be nihilistic, but there are ways, as we said, where the inside-outside strategy has to find its way to working together. And that's what we're looking at. We're not denying as you alluded to, Donna, the shortcomings of the system that is currently in place, that has been in place for centuries and only really got ramped up to an unconscionable level over the past 40 years. That takes a long time to unwind that. That is a long, long time. I mean, the day that Reagan fired the air traffic controllers is basically the day that labor died. And that was exactly 40 years ago. So it takes a lot of time to really build that up again. And we are in the process of doing that, but we have to recognize who's actually fighting for the cause and who isn't, and who frankly is just fighting for themselves and what they want. And so I think this conversation has been great. I think it's definitely one that we will continue to have. And unintentionally as it may have been, but having multiple candidates come on the podcast, talk about what's going on in their neck of the woods. Obviously, Texas and North Carolina are two of the most important states in our country. So recognizing where things are going there.
Because I lived in Texas and I will be living in North Carolina. I think I'm the common link.
You are the common link, and I've lived in Texas, Lubbock, Texas, and now have lived in North Carolina most of my life. And just want to thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jen, for bringing us and centering us on this conversation. It is about expanding our electorate. We've got to organize. We've got to register folks, and we can do this when we build this diverse working class coalition that's about prioritizing people. And I would be remiss if I did not add this. I said I was going to talk about it earlier, but we just launched an Endeavor $1 one door. And so for every dollar that is donated to this campaign, in these next 3 weeks, we will knock on a door in a county that Trump won in 2020. And so it's about understanding North Carolina is a purple state. Our registration is 35 with Democrats, it's 34 and increasing with unaffiliated, and then about 3.3 million Republicans. 3.5 million Democrats and 3.4 unaffiliated. So for us, it's about centering us. Everybody has a common struggle behind that door. The folks that we meet don't look like me. They may not have the experiences that I've had, but we're all falling prey to a rigged economy, to global warming, and impacted by a lack of Medicare for all. And so as we are knocking on these doors, we are building that coalition that we need so that we can fight against this voter suppression. So if you'll go to my website for the listeners who are interested, it's ericaforus.com. Erica, ERICAFORUS. You can't spell America without Erica. It's ericaforus.com.
Like it.
Please go donate.
It's like organized. It's like organized. Very smart.
I love it. It's very clever.
Very
and we're
good.
going to put
Very
Donna's
clever.
site up too. So guys, spread the love. Yeah, Donna, I'm glad to see that you're running again. That's exciting. And Erica,
Hey,
to me,
I would
the
love to
prospect.
Donna, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
I would
say it
love to
again.
Come back sometime and talk to you. I would love to come back sometime and talk to you more about what's going on in Texas in terms of the 2 new U.S. congressional districts that we're getting, what's actually happening, because I'm not running, in the same race. Every single district is changing in their borders and their numbers in every single way.
Uh-oh. We lost your audio, went away. Your audio left.
Boy, this has been an adventure.
Oh, we're having, it's like a tech thing. Yeah, she knows. She sees that she's not there. I think that to me, it is really the idea of having another non-corporate senator or two is very, very exciting. We're making progress. We are, I believe so. And I think I think it's great. Donna, I think what we should do, what I'd love to do is Donna, I'd love to have you come back on and also have Jessica Cisneros come on. Like we could have like a little Texas panel. And of course I'm partial to that seat because Cuellar was my representative and not a fan. So I'd love to do that. We could definitely have like a day of Texas. My son's a Texan. He was born there. So, I've got a certain amount of loyalty. But thank you guys so much for coming on. Everybody spread the love. We need to elect as many of these women as we can.
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Thank you. We love you too, Mallory.
Hey, Mallory, we love you too. I love you too.
Mallory is actually a good local friend of ours here. She is somebody who pounded the pavement and worked for us locally. She is definitely an ally for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you can check out my race. But yes, I think one interesting thing is that Texas is getting 2 new U.S. congressional districts. And that's going to change the game completely, especially for Austin, by the way. So some exciting news around that. I would love to share with your.
Okay, for sure. When is your primary? When is your race?
It should be the 1st of May, but there's a lot of hurdles in the middle because that we're fighting many things here right now, and the legislator is going to redistrict, and there's lots of juicy details there. But bottom line is, I think this is an exciting year, and I know that a lot of you, including myself, right? We're at a point in our country where everything looks like it's extremely horrible. But I want to leave you with something positive, like not just all the things I've said, but I want to leave you with something really positive. When I ran in 2020, we did not have a lack of volunteers. There were so many people that got behind. I think we had one of the most volunteer-driven campaigns across the country, right? And you know what happened after the election was over? I had people call me saying, you know what, Donna, I would leave my job for a lower paying job if I could make this country a better place. And I think that speaks volumes. There are so many people willing to leave their day job, their corporate job, wanting to make this country a better place. So I'm not the only one who who had never, thought of running for office. I never thought of myself as a political person. I'm an engineer by training, and I had a tech career for 18 years. I never even contemplated running for office, believe it or not. It was not even remotely on my radar. But I'm not the only one. There are hundreds of people out there willing to take a pay cut to make this country better. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me inspired. And I hope that you'll take that away as something positive to hang on to. Absolutely.
We will definitely have both of you back before your elections, for sure. Thank you guys coming on. I know it's last minute, but you definitely helped fill the void.
Ladies, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Needless to say, I think we built some really solid relationships with a lot of great people that have been.
Do you see Mallory's like fangirling at the idea of having like a Texas panel? But it really does make me think like we could do that, like do like statewide candidate panels, because we have a handful of people from California. We have, there's people, I mean, like definitely the states where we have multiple cool candidates running, maybe in the middle of the month, we'll hear something that will allow us to have a nice Ohio panel.
Yes.
Which would be really cool. So guys, if you're not subscribed, and please subscribe, that's free.
She just happened to show up.
It's free. And if you're not a Patreon and you could throw a little love monthly our way, we would really appreciate it. Do you want to put our Patreon in there?
Yes. But Lou needs attention.
Lou needs attention. So guys, this is Lou. And if you become a patron through Patreon, you get the Lulu sticker, which is really friggin' cute. Seriously, look how she really is the cutest dog. I mean, I know other people say to their dogs, but not like I do. I mean, I look at her and say she's the cutest dog in the history of the canine species. I mean, seriously, look at that dog. And she's particularly kind of cruddy, stinky today because she got into some stink. But there's moments where she actually does, in fact, remind me that she is a dog. Like I think of her as a little person. She's always with me. She's like a little person. But then I'll look at her and she'll have like stink on her face, and I'm like, yeah, you really are a dog, aren't you? But so yeah, join, be a patron, get the Lulu.
There's one last thing I'd like to do before we go after the year,
which is.
So for those of you who obviously follow us on social media, we have dialed back significantly just because it's just the right thing to do. We don't need to be. It's not that we don't want to engage, but we obviously want to do.
Well, I don't want to engage. He might, but go ahead.
Do what you're going to do. I mean, I can't.
Well, what does it matter? Go ahead. Continue talking what you're saying about social media.
Is this the last time I'm going to get interrupted?
I don't know. I can't predict.
So we put out a post the other day about Susan Sarandon and the fact that people still want to go after her and still blame her for the things that have been going on. The fact that they say that she's the reason why Hillary didn't win. Listen, there are many reasons why Hillary Clinton did not win. And one of the main reasons that she didn't win is because the primary in 2016 was rigged. And so when somebody says, well, how did they rig it? Well, Hillary had more votes. So how did they do this? How did they do that? I can assure you that it was rigged. And it was rigged in ways that you would never understand because you don't pay attention. The people who say that it isn't rigged. But I can assure you that when you, in the summer of 2015, cannot walk into a Democratic local office anywhere in the United States and find anything about Bernie Sanders, only Hillary Clinton, that's a form of rigging the election. That is not informing your voters in a fair and just way. That's not only not democratic, it's illegal. You can't do that.
Well, also, how about rigging machines, suppressing locations, keeping voting locations closed, relocating them so people can't find them?
How about the fact that you have
those neighborhoods?
You have our congresswoman who somehow is still in Congress in correspondence. This is a sitting congressperson in correspondence with the head of MSNBC, basically determining who can go on the air and who can't.
Right.
Who the hell is she?
She is your leader. You will bow before your leader. I would like to say I'm contemplating picking up a religion. I've always been fairly like a religious, but I'm thinking that I want to belong to the Holy Church of Susan Sarandon. And the reason that I'm contemplating this, because apparently Susan Sarandon is so almighty and all powerful that it is her fault alone that there is an abortion ban in Texas. And that blows me away, because to have that kind of power when you don't even live in Texas and be able to control that is someone that I should get behind. So I really think we should be starting like the disciples of Susan Sarandon, have some sort of holy kind of convention.
Well, we can make the candle.
We need to do something, because I just feel like somebody with that kind of power needs their own religion. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's pretty omnipotent.
Well, she is pretty.
And here all along, I thought Jill Stein was the problem, but nope, it is Susan Sarandon. And let me tell you, I've always liked her, so it's not like a stretch for me to like be a disciple of Susan Sarandon's. But yeah, I mean, I think that if she's that powerful, I'm going to start praying. I've never really prayed before, but I think I have to pray to Susan Sarandon.
There has to be a reason why.
Yes, a Sarandanian.
I really need
Brilliant,
to, but I would
Mallory.
really want to know what the specifics are. And you still didn't let me finish what I was saying.
It's hard with you. You pontificate. All
That's
right, go
okay.
ahead.
I said I was going to do that, and you said it was okay. But
I
you
know, but
decided
then
not
you
to
went
let it
off
be
on a little
okay.
tangent.
No, I
too.
wasn't going off on a tangent. I was trying to explain something, but may I continue? I don't know.
Yes, but you don't get to tell me that I can't look at the chat.
I didn't. Well, it was becoming distracting.
Kind of like when you're sitting in my car and your phone in the front seat, and I hate that when I'm driving. Kind of like that.
Okay. Well, either we're going to really be serious, or we're just going to,
Well, I'm serious.
butts around.
This bowl ain't going to smoke itself. Oh, go ahead.
And it really is disturbing to watch the ignorance of people who claim to be intelligent explain how they think they understand how things work and how they don't work. But some of the things that I noticed in terms of the responses, which I found very unsettling to say the least, not the least of which is their commentary about Wasserman Schultz not doing enough to rig the election. So when I see people who are these die-in-the-wool, true blue, no matter who's, say, I want the election to be rigged, then you do not have a leg to stand on when you talk about the things that the GOP does. Because what you're proving is that you don't believe in anything. You believe in what you believe in, and this has always been the argument that's been made against upper-class liberals, which is, do as I say, not as I do. It is a very common problem with that particular segment of the voting bloc, and unfortunately today makes up a very large swath of the Democratic Party. And this is the fight that a lot of people really don't have any interest in. When the Democratic Party rehabilitates people like Bill Kristol, Jennifer Rubin, and even George W. Bush, you have a problem. You have an even bigger problem when a show like The View, which is funded by Wall Street and all major multinational corporations, thinks that they can not only move on from Meghan McCain, but now we're going to move on to Condoleezza Rice. You thought McCain was bad. This is dialing it up to a 25. This is basically, let's just advocate for a full-blown, police state, military run, government, because that's where we're going. And to have no shame whatsoever in what you're doing. And they're masking what they're doing with identity politics, which is even more dangerous, because there's a lot of people who buy into that shit. And what Erica Smith brought up earlier this evening is absolutely true.
I love her.
If you really want to know what real racism looks like, look at the way Ilhan Omar is treated.
Oh. Because
that's bigotry, racism, sexism, and misogyny all rolled into one.
Also xenophobe, and I don't even know. It's everything. It's anti-Muslim, it's anti-foreigner, it's anti-black, it's anti all of it.
And the worst part is, as she said, Dr. King said, it's not my enemies that give me that I feel pain. It's my friends who who aren't there for me when I need them. And that's the truth. You're always going to have
the silence of your friends, not the sound of your enemies. That is your problem.
You're never going to end bigotry. It exists all over the world. And the reason it exists is because people fear the unknown. People like to live in, segregated communities. They do. A lot of people prefer that. They want to be with their own. They don't want to be around people they don't know. They especially don't want to be around. And it isn't so much color as it is culture. That is the big thing.
It's
people
both.
don't want to be around people who they can't identify with. They don't understand why they're like this. You know, that's something that makes them uncomfortable. And their attitude is, well, let's just keep them as far away from me as possible. You're never going to stop that. But what you can call into question, which is important as far as I can tell, is the fact that you have all of these representatives all throughout the country, some that are progressive, non-corporate, and then, of course, you have the ones that are just part of the party. But there is no unification there. You know, the GOP is very good at unifying when it has to. They got Donald Trump elected, for goodness sake. But the fact that there are so many people who never, and I mean ever, speak up in defense of Ilhan Omar and the stuff that she needs to go through every day. She didn't even say anything that was really that incendiary about Israel. She just said that what they're doing to the Palestinians is apartheid. And guess what? It is.
She also criticized AIPAC. I would do that. But then when I do it, I'm a self-loathing Jew. But
you're given you have a little bit of leeway for that reason alone.
No, it's just
but if
worse.
You were a person but if you were a brown woman with a hijab on your head, forget it.
Let me tell you that growing up, there were so many people that I was told were anti-Semitic growing up, like no name celebrity people, whatever. I have since had to go back and reevaluate every single one of those people because now in retrospect, anytime anybody had a criticism of Israel, we were just taught they were anti-Semitic. And so, and make no mistake, there are truly anti-Semitic people, and that is a real problem. But I have had to go back and reevaluate which of those claims were based on comments about the government of Israel versus comments negative about Jews. And so that's a huge difference. And so I've had to go and really parse that out. But yeah, no, there are real anti-Semites.
And not only that, but the hatred that is directed at somebody like a Susan Sarandon or even an Ilhan Omar, it's directed for a reason. It's because they represent real change. And there's a lot of people who don't like that. As much as people claim that they want change, the truth of the matter is most people are selfish and they want what they want and they want to stay comfortable.
Well, people want change. They just don't want to change. So and they go together. And I do want to say that I do have somewhat of ulterior motives for highlighting people like Ilhan Omar, is that I kind of am secretly hoping that eventually it'll get back to her and we'll be able to get her to come on the show because I want to talk to her. So I do want to put that out there as sort of an ulterior motive for anytime I have an opportunity to give props to her.
Ironically, the only member of the squad who follows you on social media is Ayanna Preston.
Which is interesting. Yeah. But anytime I do mention Ilhan Omar, I am kind of a fangirl. So I do kind of think maybe eventually it'll get back to her.
And listen, I don't want to take anything away from any of the others, but nobody goes through what Ilhan goes through.
That's on a whole other level. Mad respect.
It's a whole other level. And the fact that she wears the hijab, knowing full well what she is going to get for doing it,
I just think like the size of her compared to the size of the cojones on her, it's just astounding to me. So like I mad respect.
Rashida Tlaib only wears the hijab in, religious circumstances.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't participate in mocking anybody that's in the squad. First of all, I hated to name the squad in the first place because it's cliquey and elitist and it's kind of annoying and it reminds me of Mean Girls, even though I know they're not mean. I'm just like, I don't like the concept in general. But I don't really know enough about any of them personally. I'm kind of an Ilhan Omar fan. I just am.
And one of the last things I'll mention in regards to the responses that I saw, particularly directed at this idea that anyone is entitled to a vote. This is a very big problem for upper class liberals in the Democratic Party. You only have 33% of the electorate in the country. Over half, or almost half, I should say, is independent. They do not owe you their vote. They never will. And if you talk to them like they should automatically vote for you because in your bubble view of the world that Democrats are better than Republicans, guess what? Most people who are independent, as much as they may not like Donald Trump, they hate the DC Beltway bureaucrats even more. They do.
The truth is that on policy, clearly I'm more to the left with policy. But when it comes to people that I would want to hang out with, I find liberals and I find it insufferable. I find it insufferable. Like when we were campaigning, I infinitely preferred to go hang out at the Elks Club, which is predominantly independent and or GOP. I mean, those guys, you're talking a whole bunch of like old salty, guys. I would have chosen that over any social activity having to do with like the Dem clubs or anything like that. And so I get it. It's insufferable and it feels elitist and it's obnoxious and it's holier than thou. And it's just.
Why would you not want to be around working class people? Like why would you not want that?
But that's this, it's a very elitist feeling. I don't feel comfortable with that. And so when you go to the places that have working people, they're generally independent or GOP. Like when you're dealing with real, it's just the way it is.
It is unfortunate that it is what we have become accustomed to. It is
I find it, yeah.
But again, like I said, the thing that stood out the most, not just the ignorance of suggesting that the 2016 election was not rigged. It was the coin flips in Iowa, threats that Harry Reid put on the unions in Nevada.
I was going to say the shenanigans in Nevada were absurd.
Roberta Wang with the gavel, we are adjourned, even though the voice vote clearly was for Bernie. Anyone who was there knew it was for him.
They still threw it. It was all cheating.
Let me assure you, especially 2016, if Bernie won Iowa, even by a point, crushed her in New Hampshire, and then won Nevada, he would have been the nominee. Because Clinton can't fight from behind. The only thing she would have done, which is what they always do, is play dirty. And Bernie doesn't do that. And eventually people would have been like, yeah, I thought there was a reason we didn't want the Clintons again. And now I know why. And again, was there a lot of cheating early on? Not nearly as much as when Bernie won Michigan. Because at that point, they didn't have a choice. That's when things really got ugly. For example, what was going on in St. Louis during one of the last major days of multiple states voting? People were showing the pamphlets that the local Democratic Party leaders were doing at the polls. They were electioneering, handing out cards, telling them to vote for Hillary Clinton in a primary, telling them to vote against another candidate. That's not allowed.
Yes,
it's in the charter. It's in Robert's rules. You can't do that. And they did it anyway. And you think that's the only place they were doing it? They did it everywhere.
But it's cheating. People don't realize how like systemic it is. You can't point to any one thing. It is so many things. It is basic. That's like to say that they didn't. It's like cheating within the Democratic Party and how they operate is like racism in our system. It's completely ingrained. You can't even point to one thing in particular without noticing a slew of other things.
Out of over 1 million ballots in California that were never accounted for, you had the Associated Press the day before the election in California on June 6, 2016. They called it for Hillary Clinton before a single ballot was counted. How are you able to get away with how is anyone able to even accept that? The Arizona primary, not a single vote was counted, and they called it for Hillary Clinton. How about the fact that they did
People don't realize that affects later elections.
Of course it does.
Well, I mean, that's the point. That's what happened. And same thing happened in 2020 with Iowa when they held it up and held it up and held it up.
When they held up Michigan. They held up Michigan until 99% of the vote was counted. And even then they didn't want to call it.
And Buttigieg got the press. Buttigieg got the win to run on to the next place. All of it is connected. And when you've got people like there's not one smoking gun. Sometimes there's that too, but it's all of these things. It's polling places closing in certain places that would be more prone to vote for one candidate over another. It's poor Black neighborhoods having less voting machines so that people have to wait in lines longer.
During the primary in 2020.
It's that kind of nonsense.
During the primary in 2020, there is no question that despite everything that was thrown at Bernie Sanders, if he had won Texas along with California on Super Tuesday, I still think that would have been enough momentum for him to win. And what was going on in Texas doesn't get talked about enough. With the 4-hour lines at universities in Houston, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio.
The places where they know would be Bernie strong. That's cheating. It's cheating. And the party does it. It isn't, it's not like as a Democrat in a primary, you're going to blame the GOP for screwing with your primary. No, this is establishment Democratic stuff to keep their establishment incumbents sitting where they are from the top down. They do it at every level. And it is absolutely cheating. It happens all the time. And it's not even illegal. They do all sorts of things that are perfectly within the letter of the law.
And Carrie, one thing I will say, I will say this. The one thing that Bernie did not do is that he didn't have his, I wouldn't say minions because that's not the right word, but
disciples.
His disciples were not cohesive and aggressive enough to call out the shenanigans when they were happening and to basically say, remember, the reason why Trump won the presidency more than any other reason is because the GOP, the RNC, were trying to steal the nomination from him just as the DNC was doing to Bernie. The difference is that Trump came out and said, if you F with me, I'm going to drop out and run as an independent and I'll screw your whole party over. And they backed off.
Bernie would never do that.
Bernie would not do that.
Ironically, and he is an independent. That's the part about it that's even so more astounding. And yet he's still loyal. He's more loyal to them, even though he isn't even one of them.
When
Crazy.
People in the progressive movement in 2015, 2016 were getting involved and having their sort of come to Jesus moment about, wow, there might actually be somebody running who gives a damn about me.
Oh, yeah.
And they couldn't get any help whatsoever at the local DEC offices. You know what they did? They created their own offices out of their house. And this happened all over the country. I knew people who did this. They ran their own Bernie campaign from their home. That's what they did. I know people in New Jersey were doing that. That was a big thing. You think about the blood, sweat, and tears that so many people put themselves through to try to get Bernie over the finish line. And the way that they were just, people just spit in their face and didn't care. And where do you go? And now you've got these nihilistic people who have these shows who have no semblance of organizing whatsoever. They don't realize that you still need to get people elected into office because the people who are there now are only out for their own interests. You have 435 congressional members, and maybe a dozen to 15 of them are on the level.
Yeah.
Do you know how small that is? And you can claim all you want about how they can hold bills up. Let me tell you something. The power of the corporate media in this country knows no bounds because they are attached at the hip of corporate special interests. They will do whatever they have to do. If they have to paint AOC, if they have to paint Ilhan Omar, if they have to paint Rashida Tlaib, if they have to paint Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, Ro Khanna, Raul Guevara, Pramila Jayapal, they'll paint them all as heretics if they have to. That's why they can't win no matter what they do.
Well, what's so frustrating is a lot of the same people that keep saying electoral politics don't work, but yet all they do is complain about electoral politics, but then do something else. I mean, I just think that if you're not interested in it, that's fine. Then, that's fine. And I don't think it works well, but I think it's all we got. So it's kind of like, that's the menu right now. And that's just what we're dealing with. I'm not a fan. I think it's got a lot of problems. I think there's a lot of cheating. The corruption is suffocating. I mean, the reality is we don't live in a friggin' democracy anymore, people. I don't know that we ever did. Well, it was never, okay. It was it never was. I can't even come up with it. But now we're a full-fledged oligarchy. At one point, there was more of a democracy for at least, there was democracy for certain people. There was technically a voting situation and whatever. Now we're just an oligarchy. We're just a complete oligarchy with this sort of like hint of this electoral politics.
And we're never going to get away from it if we allow nihilistic people. And let me tell you,
we're just doing the best we can.
We are. And I'm not going to say his name, but anyone who is supporting at this point, the Jagoff nightclub comedian and the original supposed progressive top guys, you know who they are. those two groups out of Los Angeles, if you're following them and thinking that they're the answer, they're not.
I don't think any of our people, the only people
One
watching
of them is nihilistic and is doing it for money. And the other is akin to MSNBC Light, and they're doing it for money. They don't have any interest whatsoever in what we're fighting for, none whatsoever. And the people who are latching onto them, and you know who they are, there's probably about a dozen of them. They're all out there right now. A couple of them were on our show recently. They want to do this because this is a career.
You're very angry.
This is a career. They want money and they want clicks. And you know what? I understand this is a desperate economy right now and people are going to do whatever they got to do to make money. What we're doing is not for money. We're trying to help people.
Yes, but we would still like some. So be patrons.
Yeah. And so what do? We do mutual aid. We support food distribution.
We do stuff. Like we're not making money here. We're just trying to help people.
But any money that comes into the show, you better believe is going back into the community because that's what we do.
Well, some money goes back into the show.
Sure.
You know, like it was nice to be able to get a camera. Right. Like, okay, like sometimes we get treats for the show, but for the most part, it's just really helping us do outreach. That's all we're doing. We're just trying to help people.
I wish, and I wish there were more shows that would do what we do. I wish. But it seems to me that our format and what we're doing, the only show that really has a semblance of this, and it's just done in a different way, is Status Quo.
Well, no. See, and I think now you're comparing apples to oranges. We are not a news source. We don't claim to be a news source. I did go to journalism school. I do have degrees in journalism. I am knowledgeable about journalism, but I am not currently practicing as a journalist. So we're not a news source. I don't suggest we are. What we are and what we started out as was doing a podcast to do in-depth information. We do deep interviews, long format interviews with people and try to really give information on topics. That's always been what we do. Yeah, we do the news and amuse and it's kind of entertaining, but we are not a news source. Don't claim to be. But what we do is look, this is just our lane. We're transforming politics into service. We like the idea of building a coalition. We're just trying to do our part to help. The fact that so many people want to spend time hating on me is hilarious.
And not only that, but and listen, Cheese Sandwich, I'm not going to say his name, but yes, he has great points sometimes. But that doesn't mean that what the end result of what the people are looking for is actually good or is actually going to result in anything.
They're kicking down and punching sideways a lot.
You can identify the problem, and that's not hard to do, and he does a great job of doing that. But his solutions are completely out of
there are no real
but there
solutions.
Are none.
But anyway,
and to just throw people under the bus who are running for
when your motto is fomenting discord, and so I actually like to say what we try to do is foment discourse.
Yes.
But when people just want to be hating and stuff, it's like there is no one right answer. There's a lot, like that's exactly what Donna is saying, right? There's like so many different things, and all of it has value. But when your thing is solely tearing down what other people are doing, that's not really a very good thing. And you need to find your own thing.
And we are two people, our group, we did support Force the Vote and the Marches for Medicare for All.
We did.
So for anybody who thinks for anybody who thinks we're coming at this from the perspective of, we're like on
we support all of it. Yeah, that's the thing.
We're not on the side. We're not on anybody's side.
We support all of it. I think whatever people want to do to make a difference is good.
Yeah.
Like I support all the different things. Keith wants me to talk about the vax thing. Here's the thing. I'm not pro and I'm not con. I am very civil liberties minded with this. I think it is a personal choice. I do not think that there is any huge vast conspiracy where they're implanting like things in us for that.
Microchips?
No, but do I think there's a profit motive? Absolutely there is. Do I think that the vaccine works? Absolutely I do. So, I am a person of science. I am also a person that is strongly believes in civil liberties. And I do not trust big pharma as far as I could throw them, but I do think this vaccine works. So both things can be true. This is what I spoke about with Jordan the other day. There can be multiple things can be true. So I'm not, but what I do find ironic is that people that are so scared of big pharma, but they think that the ivermectin is okay, but that's also made by big pharma.
And I am still convinced that people peddling that are people that are profiting in some way.
Well, it's Merck. Merck is the company. And yeah, it is used for horse deworming. It is a neurotoxin. And yes, there are certain things that it has been used for besides horse deworming. But that is its primary use, and there is a picture of the horse on the box.
Let's not go down this rabbit hole.
I'm just saying.
Really not, it's no interest, and you're paying too much attention to what he's saying. So I got to say that the point of this conversation is to just recognize that there are going to be people who are absolutely fighting the cause, and they have their role to play. And there are going to be people who have no interest whatsoever in coalescing and recognizing that you need an inside and outside strategy. You can't have one without the other. We need people in the streets. As Sharif Snuggs, friend of the show, said, you need street heat, but you also need to be electing non-corporate representatives into all elected bodies of government. It is absolutely essential to have both, because there are things that people are going to be good at and things that other people are going to be good at other things.
But just, I think that when I say stay in your lane, I don't mean it like you're not welcome into mine. I mean that everybody has something that they're really good at and can contribute. And that's really how it should be working. But again, if what they seem to be able to do is just criticize other people, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's so many more important things to be doing.
That we could be doing more productively than constantly talking about other content creators and what they're doing. If we were a cohesive non-corporate left, we would be able to combat people saying such asinine things like, thank you, Susan Sarandon, for giving us a conservative Supreme Court. It's not Obama's fault that he never did what was necessary.
He didn't fight even to get Merrick Garland, who isn't even liberal, who isn't even really left.
To get him on there.
No.
Or didn't ask Ruth Bader Ginsburg to step down when it was clear that her ability to function regularly on the court was no longer there. That was evident when Obama was president. And they
have rubber stamped every single one.
It was wrong to ask her to step down. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg has some pretty black marks on her record as well.
Yeah, it bothers me too. Everybody is just a human. These are all just people. They do things that I like and do things that I don't like. But there is accountability all around.
That's not just that there's accountability all around, but seeing, and ultimately the sort of like the aha moment of all of this was seeing the people that came after you saying, I wish Debbie Wasserman Schultz did more to rig the election. That should be all you need to know. That's it. And these aren't just small people that are saying this. This is part of that blue no matter who upper class liberal crowd, which ultimately defines where most of the Democratic Party goes, because that's where most of the money comes from.
in our district. Certainly in Florida.
And for those people who need to understand why Debbie Wasserman Schultz is still in power, not only is she the head of the Florida Democratic Party, may not be in name, but let's face it, she is. This is also a district that is the most important when it comes to getting out the blue vote in the state and statewide and presidential elections. And she controls the money.
Yes, and God bless Susan Sarandon. It isn't on anybody but her. Sorry.
Yeah. And so we're
now going to start working. We should make Susan Sarandon t-shirts with her like.
No, I want to make the candle. I want to make the candle.
You want to do like a candle?
I want to get her as the card.
Okay, we need to do something.
She's already Catholic as it is. So
right?
It's
But
like
we are going to be. We need a good name. You guys, we need a good name, like the
Sarandons?
Holy Shrine. No, like the Holy Shrine Temple of the Disciples of Susan Sarandon. Like it needs to be something like ridiculous, like that. Like
Well, let's have fun with it.
Yeah, guys, we need a good name for our group, and it needs to be like Disciples of the of the Susan Sarandon, like one of those, and whatever is the most creative we'll go with. But I think that is what should be on our candle, and I think it could be like a really good promo piece. We could do it as a fundraiser for something cool.
Yeah, that would be great. And again,
we do that as a fundraiser for like, I don't know, let Susan Sarandon pick what she wants.
Just remember, and we'll leave you with this tonight, guys. When the fight for the New York Health Act really comes front and center, you better believe that Susan Sarandon is going to be there, and is not only going to be there on the ground, she'll be there financially, she'll be there spreading the word. No different than people who are up in arms right now, about the fact that the Democrats are on a path to have a 1994-like decimation in the midterms. And the only person who is doing anything to try to stop that from happening is Bernie Sanders. If they get the reconciliation bill through at $3.5 trillion with lowering the Medicare age to 60, including vision, hearing, and dental, and then last but not least, having a real climate change type of legislation put through so that we can deal with it, That is the only thing that's going to save them, if it saves them. Maybe they lose anyway, but they won't lose by much, and at least they'll have something to run on. And for those people who are not standing up, remember, corporate special interest is what is that is our focus. That is what we need to focus on. And so I needed to get this out because it
seriously,
really,
you're like on a rant. See, this is what
Yes.
I miss from not being on social media, but he sees it. So it's like, this is why I'm not on social media. I don't want that kind of feeling of stress.
No,
I don't
it wasn't
care
even-
what
no,
those
it's not a
people
question
think.
of stress. It's I don't care about the insults, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care about any of that. That doesn't bother me at all.
Just their complete and utter ignorance.
No, but when people talk about the fact that they don't believe in democracy, they put it in writing that they don't. And that's the scary part. They really don't believe in it. That's why when we are throwing our hands up in the air saying they rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders, deep down, they know it was rigged and they don't care. That's the point. We'll see you on Monday.